The moment Ethan Cole stepped onto that mat, every soul in Crestwood High's gymnasium held their breath. Two black belt champions lay sprawled on the floor, defeated in seconds by the school janitor they'd mocked just moments before. How did a man who spent his days mopping hallways just humiliate the state's most celebrated twin martial artists? This is a story about hidden strength, a father's love, and the day an entire school learned that heroes don't always wear capes. Sometimes they carry mops. Stick around to see how one quiet man changed everything. And hey, drop a comment about where you're watching from. I'd love to know how far this story travels. The autumn sun cast long shadows through the tall windows of Crestwood High School, painting golden streaks across the freshly waxed gymnasium floor. It was Friday afternoon, October 15th, and the entire school buzzed with an electric anticipation that had been building for weeks. Today wasn't just any ordinary day, it was the day of the annual martial arts exhibition, an event that had become legendary in the small Connecticut town of Millbrook. Ethan Cole pushed his industrial mop bucket down the main hallway, the rhythmic squeak of its wheels echoing off the lockers. At 38, he moved with a deliberate efficiency that came from 3 years of navigating these same corridors, learning every corner, every stubborn stain, every place where teenagers tried to hide their mischief. His weathered hands gripped the mop handle with the same steady confidence he applied to everything in his life, measured, purposeful, invisible. "Dad!" a small voice called out from behind him. Ethan turned to see his 9-year-old daughter Sophie racing down the hallway, her backpack bouncing against her small frame, her light brown hair the same shade as his flying behind her like a banner. She skidded to a stop just before crashing into the mop bucket, her green eyes sparkling with the kind of pure joy that only children could muster at the end of a school day. "Hey there, Butterfly," Ethan said, his stern features softening into the gentle smile he reserved only for her. "How was Mrs. Peterson's class today?" Sophie wrinkled her nose. "We had to do fractions again. I hate fractions. They don't make any sense. Why would anyone want just part of something when they could have the whole thing?" Ethan chuckled, a rare sound that transformed his usually stoic face. "Sometimes sweetheart parts can be more valuable than wholes. Like how I only need a small part of my day with you to make the whole thing worthwhile." She rolled her eyes but smiled the way daughters do when their fathers say something simultaneously embarrassing and endearing. "You're so cheesy, Dad." "It's a father's prerogative," he replied, ruffling her hair. "You heading to the library while I finish up?" "Actually," Sophie bit her lower lip, a gesture she'd inherited from her late mother. "Can I watch the martial arts thing today? Everyone's going. Maya said the Sato twins are going to break boards with their heads and everything." Ethan glanced toward the gymnasium where the sounds of preparation were already filtering through the double doors. The scrape of bleachers being pulled out, the thud of mats being arranged. The excited chatter of students claiming their seats. The Sato twins. He'd heard the name whispered in the hallways for weeks now. Riku and Taro Sato. 17-year-old phenoms who'd been winning tournaments since they could walk. Their father owned 3 martial arts studios in the state, and their exhibition was supposed to be the highlight of Crestwood's semester. "Please, Dad," Sophie pressed, employing the wide-eyed look that had been successfully destroying his resolve since she was 2 years old. "I promise I'll sit quietly. I brought my homework to do while I wait." He sighed, already knowing he'd lost this battle before it began. "All right, but you stay in the bleachers, understood, and if it gets too rough." "I'll close my eyes," she finished, having heard this speech before whenever they watched action movies together in their small apartment. "I know, Dad, I'm not a baby anymore." "No," he agreed quietly, seeing so much of Rachel in her determined expression. "You're not." As they made their way to the gymnasium, Ethan pushing his mop bucket while Sophie chattered about her day, neither of them noticed the appreciative glances from some of the female teachers they passed. Ethan Cole might have been the janitor, but there was something about him, the way he carried himself, the quiet strength in his movements, the mysterious scars that occasionally peeked out from under his work shirt, that suggested there was more to him than met the eye. "Mr. Cole," Vice Principal Harrison's voice boomed across the hallway. A heavy-set man with thinning hair and a perpetual sheen of sweat on his forehead, Harrison had the unique talent of making even pleasant greetings sound like accusations. Glad I caught you. We're going to need the gym cleaned immediately after the exhibition. The district superintendent is coming for the basketball game tonight, and I want those floors spotless. Yes, sir, Ethan replied simply, his tone neutral. 3 years, and Harrison still treated him like he'd started yesterday. Harrison's gaze shifted to Sophie, and his expression soured slightly. Your daughter really shouldn't be wandering the halls after hours, Cole. This isn't a daycare. Ethan's jaw tightened imperceptibly, but his voice remained steady. She's doing her homework in the library while I work Mr. Harrison. She doesn't cause any trouble. See that she doesn't... Harrison huffed, then strutted away, his expensive shoes clicking importantly on the linoleum. Sophie waited until he was out of earshot before muttering, "He's mean." He's doing his job, Ethan corrected gently, though privately he agreed with his daughter's assessment. Come on, let's get you settled. The gymnasium was already 3/4 full when they arrived. The excitement was palpable, teenagers clustered in groups, their voices rising and falling in waves of anticipation. At the center of the gym, a large blue mat had been laid out surrounded by a border of red tape. Coach Williams, a former college wrestler whose glory days were now mostly confined to the stories he told during PE class, was testing the microphone system. Testing 1, 2, can everyone hear me? Great, great. Ethan guided Sophie to a spot in the middle section of the bleachers, not too high, where she might feel isolated, not too low, where she might get caught up in any crowd surge if things got exciting. Here good? He asked. She nodded, already pulling out her math workbook with a dramatic sigh. Perfect view of my fractions. That's my girl. I'll be around okay. Just cleaning up. Dad? She called as he started to walk away. When he turned back, she gave him a small smile. Thanks for letting me stay. He winked at her and made his way to his supply closet in the corner of the gym, retrieving his smaller cleaning cart for the inevitable spills and messes that came with any school event. As he worked sweeping the edges of the gym where candy wrappers and empty water bottles had already begun to accumulate, he kept one eye on Sophie. She was bent over her homework pencil, moving across the page, occasionally looking up when the crowd's excitement peaked. The Sato twins entered through the main doors at precisely 3:30, and the gymnasium erupted. They moved in perfect synchronization, as if choreographed, wearing matching black jias with red trim. Riku, distinguished by a small scar above his left eyebrow, led the way with a confident swagger. Taro followed, slightly shorter but broader in the shoulders, his expression more serious, more focused. Their father, Master Kenji Sato, walked behind them. A compact man in his 50s with silver streaking through his black hair and eyes that seemed to catalog every person in the room as either a potential student or a potential threat. He wore a black gi with a red and gold embroidered dragon across the back, his black belt worn and frayed from years of use. Ladies and gentlemen, Coach Williams' voice boomed through the microphone feedback, squealing briefly before settling. Welcome to Crestwood High's martial arts exhibition. Today we have the distinct honor of hosting the Sato family from the renowned Sato Martial Arts Academy. Riku and Taro have won a combined 37 tournament championships, including the recent New England Regional Championship where they took first and second place. The crowd erupted in applause. Ethan noticed Sophie had abandoned all pretense of doing homework, her eyes fixed on the twins as they began their warm-up routine, a series of kicks and punches that cut through the air with audible whooshes. Before we begin the main demonstration, Coach Williams continued, Master Sato has asked me to announce that they'll be accepting challenger matches at the end. Any student brave enough to test themselves against the twins will have the opportunity to do so with proper waivers signed, of course. A ripple of nervous laughter went through the crowd. Ethan shook his head slightly. Challenger matches. He'd seen enough of those in his time to know how they usually went, skilled fighters making examples of overconfident amateurs, all in the name of learning experiences. The demonstration began with forms, the twins moving through complex kata with mechanical precision. Their movements were sharp, powerful, technically perfect. The crowd watched in silent awe as they performed synchronized butterfly kicks, spinning heel kicks, and aerial maneuvers that seemed to defy gravity. Then came the breaking demonstrations. Boards, bricks, even a baseball bat all shattered under the focused strikes of the twins. Each break was met with gasps and applause. Sophie's mouth hung open in amazement, her forgotten pencil rolling off her lap. Ethan continued his work, emptying trash cans, wiping down the water fountain, staying in the shadows. But his trained eye caught things the crowd missed. The twins were good, very good. But they were performers. Their movements were designed for maximum visual impact. Every technique telegraphed, every combination rehearsed to perfection. They'd never been in a real fight, he could tell. Never had to adapt to survive to protect something more important than a trophy. And now, Master Sato spoke for the first time, his accented English carrying clearly through the gymnasium. "My sons will demonstrate combat applications. I need 2 volunteers." Several hands shot up immediately, mostly boys, their testosterone overriding their common sense. Master Sato selected 2 seniors from the wrestling team. Thick-necked boys who looked like they could bench press a small car. What followed was a clinic in humiliation disguised as education. The wrestlers, for all their strength and enthusiasm, never stood a chance. Riku danced around the first one, landing light taps to mark where devastating strikes would have landed in a real fight. When the wrestler finally lunged in frustration, Riku used his momentum against him, sending him sprawling with a simple foot sweep that drew oohs from the crowd. Taro was less playful with his opponent, using joint locks and pressure points to control the larger boy, making him wince and tap out repeatedly. Each submission was explained to the audience, the mechanics of leverage, the vulnerability of certain joints, the way technique could overcome brute strength. "Anyone else?" Master Sato asked, when the wrestlers limped off the mat, their pride more bruised than their bodies. "Perhaps someone who thinks they might offer my sons a real challenge." The gymnasium fell silent. Ethan could feel the collective hesitation, the universal desire to avoid embarrassment. He was about to return to his cleaning when he heard Riku's voice cut through the silence. "What about you, Janitor?" Every head in the gymnasium turned. Ethan looked up from the trash bag he was tying to find Riku pointing directly at him, a smirk playing on the teenager's face. "Yeah." Taro joined in his voice, carrying the casual cruelty that came so easily to those who'd never known real hardship. "Think you can sweep more than just floors?" The laughter started as a trickle, then became a wave. Students nudged each other, pointing and giggling. Even some of the teachers seemed amused. Ethan saw Sophie shrink in her seat, her face reddening as she realized everyone was laughing at her father. "Come on!" Riku pressed play into the crowd now. "Unless you're scared, I promise we'll go easy on an old man." "Riku," Master Sato said sharply, but there was no real reprimand in his tone. This was part of the show, the mighty warriors offering to humble themselves by fighting the help. Ethan set down the trash bag slowly, his movements deliberate. He could feel Sophie's eyes on him, could sense her conflict, the desire to defend him warring with the fear of what might happen if he accepted. He looked up at her, saw her small hands clenched into fists, saw the tears threatening at the corners of her eyes. And in that moment, he made his decision. "Mr. Cole," Coach Williams said into the microphone, uncertainty creeping into his voice. "You don't have to—" "It's all right, Coach," Ethan said, his voice carrying despite the lack of amplification. He walked toward the mat, rolling his shoulders slightly. "If the young men want a match, I'm happy to oblige." The laughter died instantly, replaced by a hushed anticipation. Nobody had expected him to accept. As he approached the mat, he pulled off his work shirt, revealing a white tank top underneath. The room collectively gasped. Ethan's torso was a roadmap of violence. Scars crisscrossed his arms and shoulders, some straight and surgical, others jagged and angry. There was a puckered bullet wound near his left shoulder, what looked like shrapnel scarring across his ribs. But it wasn't just the scars that silenced the room. It was the muscle beneath them, functional and dense, the kind built not in a gym, but in the field, carrying wounded brothers across desert sand, scaling walls in dead of night, fighting for survival in places most people couldn't even pronounce. "Jesus," someone whispered from the bleachers. Master Sato's expression changed, his casual arrogance replaced by sudden wariness. He recognized what he was seeing, not a janitor, but a warrior. But it was too late to back out now. The challenge had been made in front of the entire school. "The rules," Master Sato said carefully, "are simple, light contact only. The match ends when someone yields or steps off the mat. No strikes to the face, throat, or groin." Ethan nodded, stepping onto the mat in his work boots. He didn't bow, that would have been pretense. Instead, he simply stood there, hands loose at his sides, waiting. "Which of us do you want to face?" Riku asked, his earlier cockiness wavering slightly. "Both," Ethan said simply. A ripple went through the crowd. Master Sato stepped forward. "That's not—" "Your sons challenged me together," Ethan interrupted calmly. "I accept their challenge. Unless they're scared, I promise I'll go easy on them." The twins exchanged glances, their pride stung by having their own words thrown back at them. They looked to their father who, after a long moment, nodded. "Very well," Master Sato said. "Rikutaro, show Mr. Cole the honor of taking his challenge seriously." The twins took their positions flanking Ethan on either side. The crowd held its collective breath. In the bleachers, Sophie had stood up, her math book clutched to her chest like armor. "Begin!" Master Sato barked. Riku attacked first, launching a lightning-fast roundhouse kick aimed at Ethan's ribs. It was a beautiful technique, textbook perfect. It never landed. Ethan moved not dramatically, not with any flourish, just a simple shift of weight and angle that let the kick whistle past him. He caught Riku's leg at the apex of the kick, not aggressively, almost gently, and with a subtle twist of his hip, redirected the boy's momentum. Riku found himself airborne for a brief moment before landing on the mat with a controlled thud. Taro came in simultaneously from the other side, throwing a combination of punches that had won him dozens of tournament matches. Ethan flowed around them like water, each movement minimal efficient. On Taro's third punch, Ethan stepped inside his guard, his hand finding the teenager's wrist with surgical precision. A slight pressure, a redirection of force, and Taro was suddenly off balance, stumbling past as Ethan released him. The twins regrouped quickly, their embarrassment fueling their determination. They came at him together this time, their coordination-perfect attacks complementing each other in a way that would have overwhelmed most opponents. Riku went low with a sweep, while Taro went high with a palm strike. Ethan jumped not high, not flashy, just enough to clear Riku's leg, while his hand deflected Taro's strike, using the boy's own force to spin him into his brother. They collided, tangling briefly, and in that moment of confusion, Ethan moved. His hands found their shoulders, not striking, just guiding, and with a movement that seemed almost gentle, he helped them both to the mat. They landed in a controlled manner, unhurt, but thoroughly defeated, looking up at him with a mixture of shock and dawning respect. The gymnasium was dead silent. Ethan stepped back, offering each twin a hand up. After a moment's hesitation, they took it, allowing him to pull them to their feet. "Your technique is excellent," he told them quietly, but his voice carried in the silence. "But you're fighting to win points, not to survive. There's a difference." Master Sato's voice was different now, respectful and curious. "Where did you learn to fight like that?" Ethan glanced up at Sophie, who was staring at him with eyes wide as saucers, a small, proud smile breaking across her face. "Marine Force Recon," he said simply. "Fallujah. Helmand Province. Other places that don't officially exist." He picked up his work shirt, pulling it back on. "But that was a lifetime ago. These days I just clean floors and raise my daughter." He turned to the twins who were still processing what had just happened. "You both have talent, real talent, but if you want some advice—" They nodded eagerly. Their earlier arrogance completely evaporated. "Learn to fight for something more than trophies. Fight to protect. Fight to serve. That's when technique becomes something more. That's when you become more than just fighters, you become warriors." Master Sato stepped forward and, to everyone's surprise, bowed deeply to Ethan. "You honor us with your wisdom, Kole-san. My sons and I have much to learn." Ethan nodded, uncomfortable with the attention. He looked around at the stunned faces of students and teachers, at Vice Principal Harrison, whose mouth hung open like a landed fish, at Coach Williams, who seemed to be reevaluating every interaction he'd ever had with the quiet janitor. "I should get back to work," Ethan said. "These floors won't clean themselves." As he walked back to his cleaning cart, the gymnasium exploded in applause. But Ethan only had eyes for Sophie, who had pushed through the crowd and was running toward him. She launched herself into his arms, and he caught her easily, holding her tight. "Dad," she whispered into his ear, "that was amazing. You're amazing." "No butterfly," he whispered back. "I'm just your dad. That's all I ever wanted to be." But as they separated and he returned to his mop and bucket, something had fundamentally shifted in the atmosphere of Crestwood High. The Invisible Man had been seen, truly seen for the first time. The rest of the exhibition continued, but the energy was different now. The twins performed their remaining demonstrations with less showmanship and more substance, their movements more focused, more real. Several times they looked over at Ethan as he worked as if seeking approval. He would give them small nods, almost imperceptible, but they seemed to stand taller each time. When the exhibition ended, students filed out of the gymnasium in small groups, their conversations dominated by what they'd just witnessed. Many paused to look at Ethan as they passed, some offering nervous smiles or nods of respect. A few of the bolder ones actually thanked him, though for what they couldn't quite articulate. Mr. Colt. Vice Principal Harrison approached his usual bluster, replaced by something approaching humility. I had no idea about your background. There was no reason you should have, Ethan replied evenly, wringing out his mop. It's not relevant to my job here. Still, I feel I should apologize for... No apology necessary, Mr. Harrison. I'm just here to do my job and take care of my daughter. Harrison stood there for a moment, clearly wanting to say more, but unable to find the words. Finally, he just nodded and walked away, his steps less confident than usual. As the gymnasium emptied, the Sato family approached. The twins looked properly chastened, their earlier arrogance replaced by genuine curiosity and respect. Mr. Cole, Riku began, then stopped, seemingly at a loss for words. We're sorry, Taro finished for his brother. For the disrespect, for the mockery. You were being teenagers, Ethan interrupted gently. We all make mistakes. The important thing is learning from them. Would you... Master Sato hesitated, then forged ahead. Would you consider teaching? My dojo would be honored to have someone of your caliber as an instructor? Ethan shook his head. I appreciate the offer, but I have a job. And more importantly, he looked at Sophie, who was helping him gather cleaning supplies. I have responsibilities. Then perhaps, Master Sato persisted, you would allow my sons to learn from you informally, not as a formal instructor, but as a mentor. Ethan considered this, looking at the twins. Despite their earlier behavior, he could see potential in them, not just as fighters, but as young men who could learn to be something more. We'll see, he said finally. But if I agree, there will be conditions. The first being that you volunteer here at the school. Real work, cleaning, maintenance, helping the younger kids. You want to learn from me. You start by learning humility and service. The twins exchanged glances, then nodded eagerly. Yes, sir, they said in unison. We'll discuss it more later, Ethan said. Right now I have floors to clean. As the Sato family departed, Master Sato bowing once more before leaving, Sophie tugged on Ethan's shirt. Dad, why didn't you ever tell me you were a hero? Ethan knelt down to her level, his calloused hands gently cupping her face. Because I'm not a hero, sweetheart. Heroes do extraordinary things. I just did my job, and now my job is being your father. That's not heroic, that's just love. Mom would have thought you were a hero, Sophie said quietly. Ethan's breath caught for a moment, the mention of Rachel always hitting him when he least expected it. Your mom, he said softly, thought I was a hero for remembering to buy milk. That's one of the million reasons I loved her. They stood together in the empty gymnasium, father and daughter, janitor, and student warrior and child. The late afternoon sun had shifted, casting long shadows across the floor. Ethan had just finished mopping. Come on, Butterfly, he said, standing and taking her small hand in his. Let's finish up here and head home. I'm thinking pizza for dinner. What do you say? With extra cheese, she asked hopefully. Is there any other way? As they walked out together, Ethan pushing his cleaning cart while Sophie chattered about the math homework she'd abandoned during the excitement. Neither noticed the small crowd of students still lingering outside, spreading the word about what they'd witnessed through texts and social media posts that would ensure by Monday morning everyone would know the story of the janitor who was more than he seemed. But for Ethan and Sophie, it was just another Friday afternoon, another day in their quiet life together. The only difference was the lightness in Sophie's step, the pride shining in her eyes when she looked at her father, and the knowledge that sometimes the most extraordinary people are the ones who seek no recognition at all. The parking lot was nearly empty by the time they reached Ethan's old pickup truck, a 2003 Ford F-150 with more rust than paint and over 200,000 miles on the odometer. But it ran reliably, and that was all that mattered. "Dad," Sophie asked as he helped her into the passenger seat, "do you miss it?" "The Marines, I mean." Ethan paused, considering his answer carefully. "I miss the brothers I served with. Some of them are gone now, but miss the life." "No, sweetheart. That life was about fighting. This life with you is about living." As they drove home through the quiet streets of Millbrook, Sophie's hand found his on the gear shift, her small fingers interlacing with his scarred ones. In that moment, Ethan Cole knew that all the battles he'd fought, all the scars he carried, had led him exactly where he needed to be. The warrior had found his peace not in the absence of conflict, but in choosing which battles were worth fighting. And for his daughter, he would fight them all, whether against twin black belts in a gymnasium or against the simple daily challenges of single parenthood. The autumn sun set behind them as they headed home, casting the world in shades of gold and amber, and Ethan allowed himself a small smile. Today had been unexpected, even uncomfortable, but seeing the pride in Sophie's eyes made every moment worth it. Tomorrow, the news of what happened would spread throughout the school. There would be questions, attention, things Ethan had spent 3 years avoiding. But tonight there was just pizza with extra cheese, maybe a movie on their ancient television, and the simple pleasure of being together. As they pulled into their apartment complex, Sophie was already making plans. "Maybe you could teach me some moves, just basic stuff for self-defense." "Maybe," Ethan agreed, knowing he'd already lost this negotiation too. But first, homework. "Ugh, fractions," she groaned dramatically. "Fractions are important," he said, pulling into their parking spot. "How else will you know how much of the pizza is yours and how much is mine?" "Easy," she grinned. "It's all mine. You can have a fraction." He laughed that rare sound again, and Sophie beamed. As they walked up the stairs to their second-floor apartment, she slipped her hand back into his. "Dad, I know you don't think you're a hero, but you're my hero. Always have been." Ethan squeezed her hand gently. "And you, Butterfly, are my everything. Always will be." The door to their small apartment closed behind them, shutting out the world in all its complications. Inside was their sanctuary, modest but clean, filled with Sophie's artwork on the refrigerator, photos of Rachel on the mantle, and the quiet evidence of a life built on love rather than accolades. Ethan didn't know it yet, but Monday would bring changes. The twins would show up after school ready to work, ready to learn. Other students would approach him differently, some with newfound respect, others with curiosity about his past. Teachers would nod to him in the halls, actually seeing him for the first time. Vice Principal Harrison would awkwardly try to make amends, offering opportunities Ethan would politely decline. But most importantly, Sophie would walk a little taller in school, no longer embarrassed by her father's profession, but proud of the man who chose to serve others in the most humble way possible. She would understand perhaps better than anyone that true strength isn't about what you can do to others, but what you choose to do for them. The story of the janitor who defeated the champions would become legend at Crestwood High, told and retold with increasing embellishment. But the truth was both simpler and more profound than any version the students would share. It was the story of a father who stepped onto a mat not to prove his worth to the world, but to show his daughter that worth isn't determined by titles or trophies, but by the quiet courage to stand up when standing up matters, even if you're the only one standing. As night settled over Millbrook, Ethan Cole sat at their small kitchen table, helping Sophie with her fractions while pizza cooled on paper plates. Outside their window, the world went on with its noise and chaos. But inside apartment 2B, there was peace, there was love, and there was the unshakable bond between a father and daughter who understood that the greatest victories are often the ones nobody sees. The empty gym at Crestwood High stood silent now, its floors gleaming under the security lights mopped to perfection as always. The mats had been put away, the bleachers pushed back, all evidence of the day's drama erased, except in the memories of those who witnessed it. Come Monday, Ethan would return to these halls with his mop and bucket seemingly unchanged. But something fundamental had shifted in the ecosystem of Crestwood High. The invisible man had been seen. The humble servant had shown his strength, and in doing so had taught a lesson more valuable than any curriculum could provide. Respect they would learn isn't earned in the spotlight, but in the shadows, in the quiet moments of service, in the choice to be gentle when you have the power to be forceful. And sometimes, just sometimes, the real heroes are the ones who clean up after everyone else has gone home. Monday morning arrived with a cold drizzle that turned the fallen leaves into a slippery carpet across Crestwood High's walkways. Ethan arrived at his usual time, 5:30 a.m., 2 hours before the first students would begin trickling in. The parking lot was empty except for his old Ford and the security guard sedan, its windows fogged with the warmth of coffee and morning radio. He unlocked the maintenance room with the same key he'd used for 3 years, the metal worn smooth from daily use. Inside, everything was exactly as he'd left it Friday afternoon, cleaning supplies arranged with military precision, each tool in its designated place. But something felt different this morning, though he couldn't quite place what. "Early as always, Cole," came a voice from behind him. Ethan turned to find Tom Bradley, the night security guard, leaning against the doorframe with a knowing smile. Tom was a retired cop, 63 years old, with a bad knee and good instincts. They developed a quiet friendship over the years, built on brief morning conversations and mutual respect for jobs that required seeing everything while being seen by no one. "Someone's got to set up before the chaos begins," Ethan replied, pulling on his work gloves. Tom chuckled, but there was something else in his expression. "Heard about Friday. My grandson was there, said you put on quite a show." "It wasn't a show," Ethan said quietly, loading supplies onto his cart. "No," Tom agreed, his voice thoughtful. "I don't suppose it was. You know I ran your name after you first started here. Habit from the Force. Found some interesting reading. Silver Star, Bronze Star with Valor. Purple Heart ×2. That's some heavy hardware for a janitor." Ethan's hand stilled for a moment on the mop handle. "That was a different life." "Was it?" Tom asked. "Seems to me a man is who he is no matter what uniform he's wearing. Or not wearing." Before Ethan could respond, Tom's radio crackled to life. "That's my cue," the old guard said, limping back toward his post. "But Cole, good on you for standing up. These kids, they need to see what real strength looks like. Not that flashy kung fu movie stuff, but the real thing, the kind that protects instead of punishes." Ethan watched him go, then turned back to his morning routine. By 6 a.m., he'd already cleaned the main hallway and was working on the science wing when he heard footsteps that didn't belong to the early arriving teachers. He looked up to find Riku and Taro Sato standing at the end of the hallway, both wearing jeans and t-shirts instead of their usual designer athletic wear. "Mr. Cole," Riku said, his voice uncertain. We know we're early, but..." "We wanted to prove we were serious," Taro finished. "About learning, about the volunteer work." Ethan studied them for a long moment. In the harsh fluorescent lighting, they looked younger than they had on Friday, less like champions, and more like what they were, teenagers trying to figure out who they wanted to be. "You know school doesn't start for another hour and a half," Ethan said. "Yes, sir," they replied in unison. "And you came anyway." "Yes, sir." Ethan nodded slowly, then pulled 2 pairs of work gloves from his cart. "Second floor boys' bathroom flooded over the weekend. Toilet backed up. It's going to be messy." He watched their faces carefully, saw the brief flicker of disgust, quickly suppressed by determination. "We're ready," Riku said, taking the gloves. "Lead the way," Taro added. As they walked toward the stairs, Ethan said, "First lesson, the work nobody wants to do is usually the work that most needs doing. In combat, in life, it's all the same. You do what needs to be done, not what brings glory." The bathroom was indeed a disaster. Water had seeped into the hallway carpet, and the smell was enough to make anyone gag. Ethan watched as the twins surveyed the damage, waiting to see if their commitment would survive first contact with reality. "Where do we start?" Riku asked, his jaw set with determination. For the next hour, Ethan taught them the unglamorous art of water extraction, sanitization, and restoration. The twins worked without complaint even when Taro slipped and ended up knee-deep in the contaminated water. By the time they finished, all 3 were soaked and exhausted, but the bathroom was spotless. "Not bad," Ethan said, inspecting their work. You might actually have potential. As janitors, Taro asked with a slight smile. As people who understand that every job has dignity when done with purpose, Ethan corrected. The sound of voices in the hallway below announced the arrival of the first wave of students. The twins looked at their soaked clothes with sudden anxiety. We have spare clothes in our lockers, Riku said. Can we go? Ethan said. But be back here after school, same time. As they hurried off, Ethan heard Riku whisper to his brother, Did you see how he moved? Even doing regular work? It's like he's always perfectly balanced, always ready. I know, Taro replied. It's like he's never not aware of everything around him. Ethan allowed himself a small smile as he returned to his cart. They were observant at least. That was a start. By 7:30, the school was filling with its usual Monday morning energy students, dragging themselves through the halls, teachers clutching coffee cups like lifelines, the inevitable drama of weekend breakups and hookups playing out in corners and corridors. But there was something else today, an undercurrent of whispers that followed Ethan as he worked. That's him. He heard a freshman girl whisper to her friends, the janitor who fought the Sato twins. Mom, I heard he was special forces, another added, like killed terrorists with his bare hands and stuff. My older brother said he has a Medal of Honor. A third chimed in. The stories were already morphing into myth. Ethan kept his head down, focusing on his work, but he could feel the weight of their stares. This was exactly what he'd spent 3 years avoiding. In the main office collecting the morning's attendance sheets to distribute, he overheard Vice Principal Harrison talking to Principal Martinez, a woman in her 50s who ran the school with a combination of iron will and genuine care for her students. I'm telling you, Elena, we've had a genuine war hero mopping our floors for 3 years and never knew it, Harrison was saying. Maybe we should recognize him somehow, an assembly, or the last thing Mr. Cole wants is an assembly. Principal Martinez interrupted, her voice thoughtful. I pulled his employment file this morning. Do you know he turns down a supervisor position twice? Said he preferred the evening shift because it let him be there for his daughter after school. But surely what we should do, Martinez said firmly, is respect his choices. Though I am curious about one thing. She raised her voice slightly. Mr. Cole, would you mind stepping in here for a moment? Ethan entered the office, noting how Harrison immediately straightened his tie, a nervous gesture he'd never displayed around the janitor before. Mr. Cole, Principal Martinez began, her dark eyes studying him with the intelligence that had made her one of the district's most respected administrators. I wanted to thank you for how you handled Friday's situation. It could have gone very differently. Just did what seemed right, Ethan replied. Yes, well, what seems right and what people actually do are often very different things. She leaned back in her chair. I've had 3 different board members call me this weekend. Apparently videos of the exhibition have gone somewhat viral. The district is concerned about liability safety protocols, that sort of thing. Ethan's jaw tightened. If you need me to, what I need, Martinez interrupted, is for you to know that I handled it. The Sato signed waivers, you were challenged and defended yourself admirably, and no one was hurt. In fact, Master Sato called me personally to express his gratitude for the lesson in humility his sons received. She paused, seeming to choose her next words carefully. He also mentioned that the boys would be volunteering here learning from you. I wanted to make sure you're comfortable with that arrangement. They're good kids, Ethan said. They just need some perspective. Don't we all? Martinez murmured. Very well. But Mr. Cole, if you need anything, resources support whatever, my door is open. Appreciated, ma'am. As he turned to leave, she added, Your daughter is lucky to have you. I'm the lucky one, Ethan replied, and meant it. The morning progressed with its usual rhythm, but everywhere Ethan went he noticed changes. Teachers who had barely acknowledged him before now nodded respectfully. Students stepped aside in the hallways, some with fear, others with something approaching awe. The attention sat on his shoulders like an ill-fitting jacket, uncomfortable and restricting. During third period, while cleaning up a spilled energy drink in the cafeteria, he was approached by Marcus Williams, the starting quarterback of the football team and undisputed king of Crestwood High's social hierarchy. Mr. Cole, Marcus said, his usual swagger noticeably diminished. Can I ask you something? Ethan continued mopping. Free country. Is it true what they're saying that you were in Iraq and Afghanistan? I served, Ethan said simply. Marcus shifted his weight, a 200-pound athlete suddenly looking very young. My brother's over there now. Marines. Camp Pendleton, then deployment next month. I worry about him. Ethan stopped mopping, really looking at the boy for the first time. Behind the Letterman jacket and carefully cultivated image was a scared kid worried about his older brother. What's his MOS on? Ethan asked. Infantry, 0311. Marcus's voice caught slightly. He says it's no big deal, but you know better, Ethan finished. He leaned on his mop handle, choosing his words carefully. Your brother's trained. He'll have good people watching his back. The Marines, we take care of our own. Were you scared? Marcus asked quietly. When you were over there. Every day, Ethan admitted. Fear keeps you sharp, keeps you alive. It's not about not being scared. It's about doing your job despite the fear. Marcus nodded slowly. Thanks, Mr. Cole. And, what you did Friday. That was pretty badass. Language, Ethan said mildly, but there was a hint of humor in his eyes. Marcus grinned, the first genuine expression Ethan had ever seen from him. Right, sorry, but still. As the quarterback walked away, Ethan noticed he was standing a little straighter, the weight on his shoulders perhaps a bit lighter. These small moments, Ethan thought maybe they were worth the unwanted attention. Lunchtime brought Sophie to the maintenance room, as it did every Monday. It was their tradition she'd eat lunch with him instead of in the cafeteria, a quiet half-hour of connection in the middle of their separate days. Dad, you wouldn't believe what happened in history class, she said, unpacking her lunch bag with dramatic flair. Jennifer Morrison asked if you could teach her dad self-defense. Her dad, he's like 40 and owns 3 car dealerships. I'm not a teacher butterfly, Ethan said, biting into his sandwich. But you're teaching the Sato twins? She pointed out with 9-year-old logic. That's different. They're learning humility, not combat. Sophie gave him a look that was pure Rachel skeptical and amused in equal measure. Dad, you can call it whatever you want, but everyone knows you're basically a ninja now. Ninjas were Japanese. I'm about as Japanese as this bologna sandwich. Fine, then you're a secret agent. Secret agents don't plunge toilets, sweetheart. Maybe that's your cover, she said with exaggerated seriousness. Maybe you're actually here to protect the school from terrorist janitors. Despite himself, Ethan laughed. Sophie had that effect on him, could find the light in any situation, could make him forget the weight he carried. How are the other kids treating you? He asked, his voice careful. After Friday, Sophie's expression shifted, becoming more thoughtful. It's weird. Maya keeps asking me if you could beat up her dad. Tommy Brooks said his mom thinks you're hot, which is gross. And Rebecca, she paused, frowning. Rebecca, she said her mom told her to stay away from me because you're dangerous. Sophie looked up at him with those green eyes that saw too much for her age. You're not dangerous, are you, Dad? Ethan set down his sandwich, giving her his full attention. I can be, he said honestly, to people who would hurt you or other innocent people, but dangerous to you, to your friends, never. I knew that, Sophie said quickly. I just wanted to hear you say it. They ate in comfortable silence for a moment before Sophie added, Rebecca's mom is stupid anyway. She thinks vaccines cause autism and that the moon landing was fake. Sophie. What? It's true, last parent-teacher conference, she tried to convince Mrs. Peterson that they shouldn't teach evolution. Still, we don't call people stupid. Fine. She's intellectually challenged by reality. Ethan nearly choked on his water. Where did you learn that phrase, Mr. Hendricks the librarian? He says it about politicians sometimes when he thinks no one's listening. The bell rang, signaling the end of lunch period. Sophie packed up her things but lingered at the door. Dad, I'm proud that everyone knows how strong you are now, but I was proud before too, when nobody knew. You know that, right? I know, Butterfly. Now get to class before Mrs. Peterson marks you late. After she left, Ethan sat in the quiet of the maintenance room, surrounded by the tools of his trade. 3 years he'd built this quiet life, this invisible existence that let him focus on what mattered, Sophie. Now that invisibility was shattered, and he wasn't sure what would replace it. A knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. Coach Williams stood there, looking uncomfortable. "Tom, something wrong?" Ethan asked, reverting to first names since they were alone. "No, not wrong, just—" Williams entered, closing the door behind him. "Look, Ethan, I've been thinking about Friday, about what you said to the twins about fighting to protect, fighting to serve." "What about it?" "I've been coaching for 15 years, Williams said, running a hand through his thinning hair. "Teaching kids to compete, to win, to dominate. But watching you, you weren't trying to dominate those boys. You were trying to teach them something." "They're 17, Ethan said. "Still time to learn better lessons than just winning." Williams nodded slowly. "That's what I wanted to talk to you about. I've got kids on the wrestling team. Good kids, but some of them, they're angry. Got rough home lives, absent fathers, that whole thing. They channel it into wrestling, but it's not enough. They need something more. And you think I can give them that?" "I saw how Marcus Williams looked after talking to you today. That boy hasn't shown genuine emotion about anything except football in 4 years, but you got through to him." Williams paused. "I'm not asking you to be a coach or anything official. Just, if you're already working with the Sato twins, maybe you could include a few others unofficial off the books." Ethan considered this. He joined the Marines at 18, angry and directionless after his father's death. The Corps had given him purpose-disciplined brothers. Maybe these kids needed something similar. "I'll think about it," he said finally. "But if I do this, we do it my way. No glory, no competitions, just hard work and harder lessons." "Whatever you say," Williams agreed quickly. "And Ethan, thanks. These kids, they need real mentors. Not just coaches who teach them plays, but men who can teach them how to be men." After Williams left, Ethan returned to his afternoon routine, but his mind was elsewhere. He'd come to Crestwood High seeking anonymity, seeking simplicity. Now he was being pulled into something larger, something that felt dangerously close to the leadership roles he'd walked away from when he left the Marines. At 2:45, he was wiping down tables in the library when Sarah Chen approached him. Sarah was the school counselor, a 30-something woman with kind eyes and an uncanny ability to see through teenage facades. "Mr. Cole, do you have a moment?" He straightened, noting the file folder in her hands. "If this is about Friday—" "Indirectly," she said, pulling out a chair and sitting down, a gesture that invited him to do the same. He remained standing. "I've had 6 different students come to me today asking about you, not about the fight, but about other things." "Other things?" "About how you stay so calm, about how you knew exactly what to do, about whether you ever have nightmares." She paused meaningfully. "2 of them have parents who are veterans, parents who came back different." Ethan's expression hardened slightly. "I'm not a counselor, Ms. Chen." "No," she agreed. "But you're proof that coming back different doesn't mean coming back broken. These kids, they see their parents struggling and think that's all there is. Then they see you functional, present, raising your daughter, and it gives them hope." "You don't know anything about my struggles," Ethan said quietly. "No," Sarah admitted, "but I know you're here every day. I know Sophie is thriving despite losing her mother. I know you chose to de-escalate Friday when you could have humiliated those boys. That tells me everything I need to know about the man you are now, regardless of the battles you fought." She stood, leaving the folder on the table. "Those are resources for veteran support groups in the area, in case any parents ask you about them. I'm not asking you to be anyone's therapist, Mr. Cole. I'm just asking you to be visible. Sometimes that's enough." After she left, Ethan stared at the folder for a long moment before pocketing it. Another responsibility, another crack in the wall he'd built around his life. The final bell rang at 3:15, and the school erupted into its usual end-of-day chaos. Ethan was emptying trash cans in the math wing when he heard a commotion near the main entrance. Moving quickly but calmly, he made his way toward the sound. A crowd had gathered in a circle, phones out recording whatever was happening in the center. Ethan pushed through to find Riku and Taro facing off against 3 members of the hockey team led by Derek Morrison, 6'2", 220 pounds, and known for solving problems with his fists. Thought you two were hot shit, Derek was saying, his face flushed with anger. Getting your asses kicked by a janitor and then following him around like puppies. We're not looking for trouble, Taro said, his hands raised peacefully. Yeah, well, trouble found you, Derek snarled, shoving Taro hard enough to send him stumbling backward. Riku stepped forward to defend his brother, his body automatically falling into a fighting stance, and Ethan could see how this would play out. The twins would destroy these boys, would use their training to humiliate them just as they'd planned to humiliate others on Friday. The cycle would continue. Enough, Ethan said, his voice cutting through the noise like a blade. The crowd parted, and Derek's face went pale as Ethan approached. But instead of addressing the aggressor, Ethan looked at the twins. What did I tell you about fighting? He asked calmly. To protect, Riku said immediately. To serve, Taro added. And who are you protecting right now? What are you serving? The twins exchanged glances, understanding dawning in their eyes. Our own pride, Riku admitted quietly. Exactly. Ethan turned to Derek. You have something to say to these boys. Derek's jaw worked, his friends watching expectantly. They think they're better than everyone else. Do they? Ethan interrupted. I saw them at 6 this morning cleaning up toilet water. I saw them volunteering to help others instead of training for their next trophy. What have you done today besides this? Derek had no answer. Here's what's going to happen. Ethan continued, his voice conversational, but carrying an undertone that made everyone lean in. You're going to apologize. Then you're going to walk away. And tomorrow you're going to find me during lunch, and we're going to discuss why you think violence is the answer to feeling inferior. I don't feel... Ethan stepped closer, not threateningly, just enough to make his presence felt. Everyone feels inferior sometimes, son. The difference between boys and men is how they handle that feeling. Derek stood frozen for a moment, then muttered, sorry, before pushing through the crowd with his friends trailing behind. The gathered students began to disperse, but Ethan heard the whispers, saw the looks of respect, and something else understanding. He wasn't just the janitor who could fight. He was something more complex, more valuable. Mr. Cole, Riku said, we could have handled them. I know, Ethan replied. That's the point. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. Come on, we've got work to do. As they walked back toward the maintenance room, Taro asked, would you really have stopped us if we'd fought yes? How? Ethan glanced at him. You don't want to know. The twins exchanged nervous looks but followed silently. For the next 2 hours, Ethan had them help with general maintenance, replacing ceiling tiles, fixing a broken door handle, painting over graffiti in the boys' bathroom. As they worked, he taught them things that had nothing to do with fighting and everything to do with being warriors. See this graffiti, he said, as Taro painted over a particularly crude drawing. Someone thought this was funny, thought it was harmless. But the person who has to clean it, that's time away from their family. Every action has consequences beyond what we see. We never thought about it that way. Riku admitted, his designer clothes now splattered with paint. Most people don't, Ethan said. That's why the world is the way it is. At 5 o'clock, Master Sato arrived to pick up his sons. He found them in the maintenance room, exhausted, dirty, but somehow more present than he'd seen them in years. Cole-san, he said, bowing slightly. My sons... They did good work today, Ethan said. They're welcome back tomorrow if they want. We'll be here, Taro said immediately. Master Sato studied his sons, noting something different in their posture, their expressions. What are you teaching them? The same thing the Corps taught me, Ethan replied. That strength without purpose is just violence. That discipline without compassion is just cruelty. That being a warrior means being a protector, not a conqueror. These are not lessons found in most dojos, Master Sato observed. No, Ethan agreed. They're found in foxholes and forward bases in the moments between firefights when you realize that the man next to you matters more than any medal, any glory, any victory. Master Sato was quiet for a long moment. My sons are fortunate to learn from you, as am I. He paused, then added, if you would ever consider teaching adults as well, I'll think about it. Ethan said the same response he'd given to everyone today. After the Satos left, Ethan finished his evening routine in blessed solitude. Sophie was at her after-school program until 6, giving him time to process the day's events. He was putting away the last of his supplies when he heard footsteps in the hallway. Soft, deliberate, trained. A woman appeared in the doorway, early 30s, athletic build, carrying herself with the kind of awareness that came from specialized training. She wore civilian clothes, but Ethan recognized the bearing immediately. Military or something adjacent? Mr. Cole. My name is Agent Sarah Walker, FBI. She held up her credentials and Ethan studied them carefully. They were real. How can I help you, Agent Walker? I'm not here officially, she said, pocketing her badge. This is more professional courtesy. Ethan waited, saying nothing. That video from Friday, it caught some attention at the Bureau. Some of us did some digging, found out who you really are, or were. She paused. Force Recon MARSOC, multiple deployments, then you just disappeared. Turned down contractor offers worth high 6 figures to become a janitor in Connecticut. Is there a question in there? More of a concern, Walker said. Men with your skill set don't usually just walk away. They either can't adjust to civilian life and spiral, or they're planning something. Or, Ethan said evenly, they lose their wife to cancer and decide their daughter needs a father more than the government needs another operator. Walker's expression softened slightly. I read about your wife. I'm sorry. Are we done here? Almost. She pulled out a business card. I know you want to be left alone, want to raise your daughter in peace. I respect that. But the thing is, men like you can't help but protect people. It's who you are. And sometimes protecting people requires more resources than a mop and a bucket. Ethan took the card but didn't look at it. I'm not trying to recruit you, Walker continued. Just letting you know that if you ever need anything, information, resources, backup, you have friends you don't know about. People who understand what you've done, what you've sacrificed. Appreciated, Ethan said, his tone indicating the conversation was over. Walker nodded and turned to leave, then paused. Your daughter's lucky to have you, Mr. Cole. But maybe consider that you staying completely in the shadows isn't just hiding yourself. It's hiding an example these kids desperately need to see. After she left, Ethan stood in the empty maintenance room holding the FBI agent's card. 3 years of invisibility shattered in 3 days. The quiet life he'd built was changing, whether he wanted it to or not. His phone buzzed. A text from the after-school program. Sophie not feeling well. Can you pick her up early? Everything else immediately became secondary. He grabbed his keys and headed for his truck. FBI cards and teenage mentorship forgotten in the face of the only mission that truly mattered, being Sophie's father. 20 minutes later, he found her in the program's sick room, curled up on a cot, with a slight fever and an apologetic expression. I'm sorry, Dad. I know you're working. Hey, he said softly, kneeling beside her and feeling her forehead. You're my priority always. Work is just work. My stomach hurts, she admitted. And my head. Probably that bug going around. Come on, let's get you home. He carried her to the truck despite her protest that she could walk. She was getting bigger, but to him, she'd always be the tiny baby he'd held while Rachel took her last breaths, the infant he'd promised to protect and love enough for 2 parents. At home, he settled her on the couch with ginger ale and crackers, then sat beside her stroking her hair as they watched old cartoons on their ancient television. Dad, she said sleepily. Things are different now, aren't they? At school. A little bit, he admitted. Are you okay with that? He considered lying, telling her everything was fine, but Sophie deserved better than comfortable lies. I don't know yet, he said honestly. Change is hard for me. I liked being invisible. But you were never invisible to me, she said, snuggling closer to him. Maybe now other people can see what I've always seen. And what's that? That you're the strongest person in the world, not because you can fight, but because you choose not to, because you choose to help instead. Ethan held her tighter. Feeling the truth of her words, Maybe Walker was right. Maybe hiding wasn't protecting Sophie, but depriving her and others of something important. The twins want to keep learning from you, don't they? Sophie asked. Yes. And Coach Williams wants you to help with the wrestling team. How did you know that Maya's older brother, is on the team? He told her. Sophie looked up at him. Are you going to do it? What do you think I should do? Sophie was quiet for a moment, then said, Mom always said that if you can help someone, you should. That it's not about deserving or earning, it's about being human. Rachel's words through their daughter's mouth. Even after 3 years, his wife's wisdom continued to guide them. Then I guess I'll help, he said. Good, Sophie murmured, already drifting toward sleep. The Sato twins seem okay when they're not being jerks, and Derek Morrison definitely needs help. He pushed Maya's brother last week just because he got a better grade on a test. How do you know all this? I pay attention, she said simply, like you taught me. As Sophie slept against him, Ethan thought about the day's events, the twins working alongside him without complaint, Marcus Williams worrying about his brother, Derek Morrison's anger masking insecurity, Sarah Chen's folder of resources, Agent Walker's card. For 3 years, he'd focused solely on Sophie, on being the father she needed. But maybe being that father meant more than just providing and protecting. Maybe it meant showing her how to engage with the world, how to help others, how to use strength for service. His phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. He opened it to find a message from Tom Bradley. My grandson hasn't stopped talking about you, says you're the coolest adult he knows. His dad walked out 2 years ago. Think you might have time to talk to him sometime. No pressure. Another responsibility. Another crack in the wall. But as he looked down at Sophie sleeping peacefully against his chest, he realized the wall had never been for his protection, it had been for hers. And maybe, just maybe, she didn't need it anymore. Maybe what she needed was to see her father as he truly was, not perfect, not invincible, but trying every day to be better, to help others be better. The rain had stopped and weak sunlight filtered through their small living room window. Somewhere in town, the Sato twins were probably telling their father about their day of manual labor. Marcus Williams was texting his brother in Camp Pendleton. Derek Morrison was nursing his wounded pride, and maybe possibly thinking about why he led with his fists. And in apartment 2B, Ethan Cole sat with his sleeping daughter, accepting that his days of invisibility were over. The warrior had been seen, and now he had to decide what to do with that visibility. Tomorrow, Riku and Taro would return, ready to work, ready to learn. Coach Williams would bring his troubled wrestlers. Derek Morrison might actually show up for that lunch conversation. The ripples from Friday's exhibition were spreading touching lives in ways he hadn't anticipated. But tonight, none of that mattered. Tonight, there was just a father and his daughter, safe and warm and together. Everything else could wait until tomorrow. Sophie's fever broke around midnight, but Ethan remained awake, sitting in the uncomfortable chair beside her bed, watching her breathe. The apartment was quiet except for the occasional car passing on the street below and the rhythmic tick of Rachel's old clock on the nightstand. He'd kept that clock despite its tendency to run slow because Sophie said it still smelled like her mother's perfume. At 3 a.m, his phone vibrated with a text from an international number he recognized immediately. Jake Phoenix Morrison, his former squad leader, now working private security in Dubai. The message was simple. Saw the video. Still got it, brother. When you're ready to talk, I'm here. Ethan deleted the message without responding. That life, those brothers, they belonged to a different man. A man who didn't have a 9-year-old daughter, who needed stability more than she needed a father with a past full of ghosts. By 5:30, Sophie's color had returned to normal, and Ethan felt safe leaving her sleeping to start his day. He left a note on her nightstand with the neighbor Mrs. Chen's phone number and instructions to stay home from school. Mrs. Chen, a 70-year-old widow from Taiwan, had become their unofficial grandmother, always ready with soup and stories when needed. The drive to school was different this Tuesday morning. The familiar streets seemed sharper somehow, as if the events of the past few days had adjusted his focal length. He noticed things he'd previously ignored: the homeless veteran who slept behind the drugstore, the teenage girl waiting alone at the bus stop in the pre-dawn darkness, the drug deal happening in the parking lot of the abandoned strip mall. Tom Bradley was waiting for him at the employee entrance, 2 cups of coffee in hand. Thought you might need this, Tom said, offering one of the cups. Heard Sophie was sick yesterday. Word travels fast, Ethan observed, accepting the coffee gratefully. Small town, smaller school. My grandson Jimmy, he's the one I texted you about. He's been asking when he can meet you. Tom, I'm not a role model. No. Tom gestured at the school building. You know there are already kids here. Showed up at 5, hoping to catch you. The Sato twins brought 3 others with them. Ethan looked toward the main entrance and indeed saw 5 figures huddled against the morning cold. Besides Riku and Taro, he recognized Marcus Williams, Derek Morrison, and surprisingly, Jennifer Morrison, Derek's younger sister, a sophomore known more for her academic achievements than any athletic pursuits. What are they doing here? Ethan asked. Same thing we're all doing, Tom said philosophically. Looking for something real in a world full of fake. You showed them real on Friday. Now they want more. Ethan approached the group, noting how they straightened as he drew near. Derek looked uncomfortable clearly here against his better judgment, while his sister seemed determined. Marcus was exhausted probably from staying up texting his deployed brother. It's 5:40 in the morning, Ethan stated. Yes, sir, Riku responded for the group. School doesn't start for 2 hours. We know, Taro added. So why are you here? They exchanged glances before Jennifer spoke up, her voice steadier than her brother's had ever been. Because we want to learn, not just fighting or whatever. We want to learn how to be better. Better at what? Everything, Marcus said quietly. Better at controlling anger. Better at protecting people who need it. Better at knowing when to fight and when not to. He paused. My brother ships out next week. I want to understand what he's heading into. Want to be the kind of man he'd be proud of when he comes back. Ethan studied each of them in turn. These weren't bad kids, just lost ones. The kind of lost he recognized from his own youth before the Marines gave him direction. Inside, he said finally. You want to learn first lesson starts now. He led them to the gymnasium, flipping on only half the lights, creating pools of brightness separated by shadows. The space felt different at this hour, almost church-like in its quiet. Sit, he commanded, and they formed a semicircle on the floor. Before we do anything physical, we talk. Jennifer, why are you really here? The girl shifted uncomfortably. My brother. He's angry all the time, has been, since our dad left 2 years ago. He's going to hurt someone, eventually really hurt them, and then his life is over. I thought maybe if he learned from someone who actually knows violence, he'd understand why it's not the answer. Derek. Ethan turned to the boy. Your thoughts. Derek's jaw worked for a moment before he answered. She's right. I am angry. All the time. It's like this fire in my chest that never goes out. Friday when you stopped me from fighting them. He gestured at the twins. I wanted to hit you, but I don't know. I felt like you understood, like you knew exactly what was burning inside me. I do, Ethan said simply. I was 17 when my father died. Drunk driver hit him on his way home from his 3rd job. The driver walked away without a scratch. I put him in the hospital 2 weeks later, nearly killed him with my bare hands. The group was silent, processing this revelation. The judge gave me a choice, Ethan continued. Jail or the Marines. I chose the Corps, thought I'd learn to kill legally. Instead, I learned to protect. Learned that rage without purpose is just destruction, but rage channeled into service becomes something else entirely. What? Marcus asked. Determination, courage, the ability to stand between evil and innocent people who can't protect themselves. He stood and they scrambled to follow. We're going to train, but not the way you think. No punching bags, no sparring, not yet. First, you learn to serve. For the next hour, he had them cleaning. Not casual cleaning, but military style, every surface spotless, every corner squared away. They worked in silence initially, but gradually began to coordinate, helping each other without being asked. This is stupid, Derek muttered, scrubbing the bleacher undersides where years of gum had accumulated. Is it? Ethan asked. You're doing something nobody wants to do, something that needs doing without recognition or reward. That's service. That's strength. But we could be learning to fight, Derek persisted. Ethan moved so quickly, Derek didn't have time to react. One moment he was standing with his scrub brush, the next he was on the ground. Ethan's hand at his throat, not squeezing, just present, undeniable. "Fighting is easy," Ethan said quietly, helping Derek up as quickly as he'd put him down. "Any fool can throw a punch. Building something, maintaining something, protecting something that's hard. That requires real strength." By 7 o'clock, they'd transformed the gymnasium. It gleamed under the lights, cleaner than it had been in years. The 5 teenagers stood together, sweaty and tired, but somehow proud. "Same time tomorrow?" Riku asked hopefully. "If you're serious," Ethan replied. "But understand something, this isn't a club. This isn't for college applications or impressing people. This is about becoming who you're supposed to be, and that process isn't comfortable." "We understand," Jennifer said, speaking for her brother as much as herself. As they dispersed to prepare for the regular school day, Ethan noticed Principal Martinez watching from the doorway. She approached slowly, taking in the pristine gymnasium. "I didn't authorize this, she said, though her tone was more curious than accusatory. "No, ma'am. They showed up on their own. And you decided to put them to work." Seemed better than sending them away. Martinez walked to the center of the gym, her heels clicking on the polished floor. "Mr. Cole, I've been in education for 25 years. I've seen every program, every initiative, every attempt to reach troubled kids. Most fail because they try to impose structure from the outside. But this," she gestured at the space, "this is different. They chose to be here." "They're looking for something," Ethan said. "Purpose, maybe. Or just someone to show them that strength doesn't mean dominance." "And you're willing to be that someone?" "I'm just a janitor, Principal Martinez." She smiled, a knowing expression that reminded him of Rachel when she saw through his attempts at deflection. "No, Mr. Cole. You're a teacher. You just use different classrooms than the rest of us." The regular school day began with its usual chaos, but Ethan noticed the 5 students from the morning session moving differently through the halls. They stood straighter, helped others without being asked, picked up trash without being told. Small changes, but noticeable. During second period, while mopping the science wing, he encountered Miss Patricia Reeves, the AP biology teacher known for her exacting standards and low tolerance for nonsense. "Mr. Cole," she said, adjusting her glasses, "I understand you've been teaching some of our more challenging students." "Just putting them to work," he replied. "Jennifer Morrison hasn't missed a single homework assignment this week. First time all semester. She says she's been getting up early to train with you. We cleaned the gym this morning." "You did more than that." Ms. Reeves lowered her voice. "That girl has been carrying her family since her father left. Her mother works 3 jobs, her brother acts out, and Jennifer tries to hold it all together. This morning was the first time I've seen her smile genuinely in months." Before Ethan could respond, a commotion erupted down the hall. They both rushed toward the sound to find a crowd gathered around 2 students squared off in the center. But it wasn't a typical fight scene. Marcus Williams stood between a smaller freshman and 3 seniors who were known for their bullying tactics. "Back off, Stevens." Marcus was saying, his quarterback presence commanding attention. He said he doesn't have any money. "Since when do you care about freshman Williams?" Stevens, the lead bully, sneered. "Since now," Marcus replied simply. "Walk away." "Or what? You'll get your janitor friend to fight us." Marcus smiled, a cold expression Ethan recognized. "No, I'll handle it myself. But ask yourself if that's really what you want. 3-on-1, in front of everyone with phones recording. How's that going to look on your college applications?" It was brilliant, Ethan thought. Marcus had given them a way out that preserved their pride while protecting the freshmen. No violence needed, just intelligent application of social pressure. The seniors grumbled but dispersed, and Marcus helped the freshmen gather his scattered books. "Not bad," Ethan said once the crowd cleared. Marcus turned surprised. "Mr. Cole, I didn't see you there." "That's the point. The best interventions are the ones where nobody throws a punch. I remembered what you said yesterday about violence being the last option, not the first." "You're learning," Ethan noted. "Your brother would be proud." Marcus's face lit up at that. and Ethan realized how hungry these kids were for approval for someone to notice their efforts at being better. Lunchtime brought an unexpected visitor. Master Sato arrived with a younger man Ethan didn't recognize, both in business suits rather than GIs. Kolsan. Master Sato bowed slightly. This is my brother Hiroshi. He's a psychologist specializing in veteran affairs. Hiroshi extended his hand, which Ethan shook cautiously. I apologize for the ambush, Mr. Cole. My brother told me about you, and I was hoping we could talk. About the fact that you're teaching trauma response without realizing it, Hiroshi said directly. The cleaning, the discipline, the controlled environment, these are all techniques we use in veteran recovery programs. You're essentially running an informal therapy group. Ethan's expression hardened. I'm not a therapist. No, Hiroshi agreed. You're something more valuable, a living example that trauma doesn't have to define you. These kids, many of them are dealing with their own traumas. Divorce, abandonment, violence at home. They see you functioning despite whatever you've been through, and it gives them hope. I don't talk about what I've been through. You don't have to. Your scars tell enough of the story. The way you move, always aware of exits, always positioned to respond to threats, the kids might not consciously recognize it, but they feel it. They feel safe around you because they know you understand danger. Master Sato interjected, My sons haven't stopped talking about this morning's session. Taro said it was harder than any tournament he's competed in. Physical challenges are easy, Ethan said. It's the mental and emotional ones that break people. Exactly. Hiroshi leaned forward. Which is why what you're doing is so important. But Mr. Cole, I have to ask, who's helping you? The question hung in the air like a challenge. Ethan thought of the nightmares that still came, the hypervigilance that never fully went away, the moments when a car backfire or a door slam sent him reaching for a weapon that wasn't there. I manage, he said finally. Managing isn't thriving, Hiroshi said gently. And these kids need to see that thriving is possible, not just surviving. He placed a card on the table. I work with a lot of veterans. No judgment, no mandatory reporting unless there's imminent danger. Just conversation. Think about it. After they left, Ethan sat alone in the cafeteria, the business card feeling heavier than it should. He'd built his life around being strong for Sophie, but what if strength meant admitting he needed help too? His phone buzzed with a text from Mrs. Chen. Sophie feeling better, ate soup, doing homework. Don't worry. Don't worry. If only it were that simple. The afternoon brought Derek Morrison to his maintenance room as promised. The boy stood in the doorway, clearly uncomfortable but present. You came, Ethan observed. Said I would. Saying and doing are different things. Come in. Derek entered, looking around the organized space with surprise. It's not what I expected. What did you expect? I don't know. Mess chaos. This looks like a military room. Old habits, Ethan said, pulling out 2 chairs. Sit. Tell me about your father. Derek's whole body tensed. What about him? He left 2 years ago. Your sister mentioned it. That's when the anger started. He didn't just leave, Derek spat. He had another family, whole other life, 2 towns over. Wife, kids, the whole thing. We were his practice family, and when he got good enough at it, he went and got his real one. The pain in the boy's voice was raw, familiar. Ethan had heard it in young Marines who'd enlisted to escape broken homes. And you've been the man of the house since, Ethan said. It wasn't a question. Someone has to be. Mom falls apart every time she sees him at Jennifer's school events. Jen tries to pretend everything's fine. Someone has to be angry enough to keep us from completely dissolving. Anger as armor. Ethan nodded. I know it well. But here's what they don't tell you eventually, that armor becomes a prison. You can't take it off, can't let anyone in, can't feel anything except the rage. Better than feeling the hurt, Derek muttered. Is it... You pushed those kids around looking for fights? Were you any happier after? Did it fix anything? Derek was quiet for a long moment. No. Made it worse, actually. Jen started avoiding me. Mom started crying more. I became him, the person causing pain instead of preventing it. Recognition is the first step. Ethan said. You're here, which means you want to change. That takes more courage than any fight. How? Derek asked, and for the first time he sounded like the scared 16-year-old he was. How do I stop being so angry all the time? You don't stop, Ethan said, surprising him. You redirect. Anger is just energy. You can use it to destroy or to build. Every time you want to hit something, build something instead. Fix something. Help someone. The anger doesn't go away, but it becomes fuel for something better. Is that what you did after whatever happened to you over there? Ethan thought of the months after Rachel's diagnosis, the rage at the universe for taking her, the desperate need to hit something, anything. Then he thought of Sophie, tiny and perfect, and needing him whole. Every day, he admitted. Some days are harder than others, but every day I choose to build instead of break. Derek nodded slowly. The morning sessions, can I keep coming? If you're willing to work, real work, not just physical training. I'm willing. Then be there tomorrow, 5:40 sharp. As Derek left, Ethan saw a change in his posture, still tense, still carrying anger, but now with a direction to channel it. The rest of the afternoon passed in routine maintenance, but Ethan found himself checking his phone more often, making sure Sophie was okay. At 2:30, she texted him a photo of herself doing homework with Mrs. Chen's cat in her lap, along with the message, "Feeling better. Can I come to school tomorrow?" He smiled, texting back, "We'll see how you feel in the morning." At 3:15, when the final bell rang, Ethan was surprised to find not just the morning group waiting for him, but 3 additional students. Tom Bradley's grandson, Jimmy, a skinny kid with nervous eyes. Maya Thompson, Sophie's friend whose brother had been protected by Marcus earlier. And surprisingly, Rebecca Hayes, the girl whose mother had told her to stay away from Sophie because Ethan was dangerous. "Ms. Hayes," Ethan said carefully. "Does your mother know you're here?" Rebecca lifted her chin defiantly. "No, but I'm 16. I can make my own choices about who I learn from." "And what do you want to learn?" "How to not be afraid," she said quietly. "I'm scared all the time. Scared of disappointing people, scared of not being perfect, scared of everything. But you're not afraid of anything, are you?" Ethan almost laughed at the irony. "I'm afraid of plenty, Ms. Hayes. Fear is normal. It's what you do with that fear that matters." "So teach us," Jennifer Morrison said, speaking for the group. "Teach us what to do with all these feelings we don't know how to handle." Looking at their faces, young Ernest searching Ethan made a decision that would have seemed impossible a week ago. "All right, but we do this properly. Official after-school program with parental permissions and Principal Martinez's approval. No vigilante training, no fight club, just life skills." "Life skills?" Marcus asked skeptically. "The skills you need for life," Ethan clarified. "Physical fitness, mental discipline, emotional regulation, service to others. The things they don't teach in regular classes, but everyone needs to know." "Will you teach us to fight?" Jimmy asked nervously. "I'll teach you when not to fight," Ethan replied, "which is almost always. And I'll teach you how to protect yourselves and others when there's no other choice." The group murmured agreement, and Ethan found himself with an unexpected classroom of 8 students, all looking to him for something he wasn't sure he could provide. "For now, we work," he said. "The football field needs new lines painted for Friday's game. We're going to do it." "But that's not our job," Rebecca protested. "Everything that needs doing is our job," Ethan corrected. "That's what service means." For the next 2 hours, they worked together, measuring, marking, and painting precise white lines on the field. Ethan taught them about attention to detail, about taking pride in work, regardless of recognition, about finding meditation in repetitive tasks. "My therapist calls this mindfulness," Rebecca said, carefully filling in a yard line. "Your therapist is smart," Ethan replied. "Physical work grounds you in the present. Hard to worry about tomorrow when you're focused on making this line straight." "Is that why you became a janitor?" Maya asked. "To stay grounded?" Ethan considered the question. "Partly. Also because it's honest work. You can see the results immediately. Clean floor, fixed door-painted field. There's satisfaction in that simplicity." "But you could be doing so much more," Derek said. "With your skills, your experience." "I am doing more," Ethan gestured to all of them. "Right here," Right now. This is more. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the freshly painted field, the group stood together admiring their work. The lines were perfect, crisp, and bright against the green grass. "It's beautiful," Jennifer said softly. "You did that," Ethan told them. "Together. Remember that feeling. That's what accomplishment feels like when it's earned, not given." Parents began arriving to pick up their children, and Ethan noticed the curious looks, the whispered conversations. Word was spreading about the janitor's informal training sessions. Tom Bradley approached with his grandson. "Jimmy won't shut up about you, Ethan. Says you're going to teach him to be strong." "I'm going to teach him he's already strong," Ethan corrected. "He just needs to learn how to access it." Tom's eyes misted slightly. "His dad, my son. He struggled when he came back from Afghanistan. Couldn't adjust. Took his own life 2 years ago." Ethan's expression softened. "I'm sorry, Tom." "Jimmy found him." Tom continued quietly. "Hasn't been the same since. But today, talking about your sessions, it's the first time he seemed excited about anything." "We'll take care of him," Ethan promised. As the last of the students left, Principal Martinez appeared, having watched the field painting from her office window. "Mr. Cole, we need to talk about liability insurance official procedures." "I know," Ethan said. "I'll fill out whatever paperwork you need." "Actually," she smiled, "I've already started it, calling it an alternative physical education and life skills program. The school board will approve it. Several members have already called expressing support." "How did they know?" "Small town, Mr. Cole. News travels fast, especially good news." She paused. "You're making a difference here. These kids, they needed someone like you. They need a lot more than I can give them." "Maybe, but you're giving them what you have, and that's more than anyone else has offered." As Martinez walked away, Ethan stood alone on the painted field, thinking about how drastically his life had changed in less than a week. The invisible man had become painfully visible. The simple janitor had become a complex mentor. His phone rang, Sophie calling. "Dad, Mrs. Chen says dinner's ready. She made extra for you." "On my way, Butterfly." "Dad, I heard about your training thing. Maya texted me. She says you're teaching them to be warriors." "I'm teaching them to be people, Sophie. Good people. That's what warriors are, right? Good people who protect others." From the mouths of babes, Ethan thought. "Yeah, sweetheart, that's exactly what warriors are." Driving home through the familiar streets, Ethan felt something shifting inside him, some wall he'd built beginning to crumble. For 3 years, he'd focused solely on Sophie, on being her father and nothing more. But maybe, just maybe, being a good father meant being part of a community, meant helping other kids who needed what he could offer. The apartment building came into view, warm lights glowing in windows, Mrs. Chen's apartment bright with welcome. Sophie would be there, feeling better, full of questions about his day. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. Official paperwork concerned parents. Kids who would test boundaries. But tonight, there was dinner with his daughter and their adopted grandmother's stories about the day homework to check and the simple pleasure of being present in their small good life. The warrior was learning to be a teacher. The protector was learning to be a guide, and the father was learning that sometimes the best thing you could do for your child was show them how to help others. As he climbed the stairs to Mrs. Chen's apartment, he could hear Sophie laughing at something on television, could smell the ginger and garlic of a home-cooked meal, could feel the warmth of belonging somewhere after so many years of simply existing. The door opened before he could knock, Sophie launching herself into his arms. "Dad, Mrs. Chen made pot stickers, and she taught me 3 words in Mandarin." "That's wonderful, Butterfly," he said, carrying her inside despite her protest that she was too big. Mrs. Chen smiled from the kitchen, her weathered face bright with affection. "Ethan, good. Food getting cold. Sit, sit." As they gathered around the small table, Sophie chattering about her day. Mrs. Chen occasionally interjecting with observations in her accented English. Ethan felt something he hadn't felt in years, complete. Not perfect, not without pain or challenges, but complete in a way that made the difficulties worthwhile. "Mr. Tom's grandson is nice," Sophie said between bites. "Jimmy, he's in my grade. He said you're going to teach him to be brave." "Everyone's already brave," Ethan said. Sometimes they just need help remembering it. Like you needed help remembering? Sophie asked innocently. Ethan met his daughter's wise eyes. Yeah, Butterfly. Exactly like that. Mrs. Chen patted his hand with her gnarled fingers. Good man, she said simply. Good father. Good teacher now, too. The evening settled around them like a comfortable blanket, the outside world with all its complications temporarily held at bay. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, more kids seeking guidance, more responsibilities. Ethan hadn't asked for but couldn't refuse. But that was tomorrow. Tonight there was just this family food and the quiet recognition that sometimes the life you build after everything falls apart can be even better than the one you lost. Not because the pain goes away, but because you learn to build something beautiful despite it. The next morning arrived with frost on the windows and Sophie bouncing on Ethan's bed at 5 o'clock, fully recovered and insisting she was ready for school. Her energy was infectious even at this ungodly hour, and Ethan found himself smiling despite the early wake-up call. Can I come with you to the early training? She asked, already dressed in jeans and her favorite purple sweater. Please, I promise I'll just watch. It's not a spectator sport, Butterfly. Then I'll help. I can paint lines or clean or whatever you have them doing. Ethan studied his daughter's eager face, recognizing Rachel's determination in those green eyes. Fine, but you follow the same rules as everyone else. No special treatment because you're my daughter. Deal. She practically vibrated with excitement. They arrived at school to find 12 students waiting in the cold morning air, their breath forming clouds in the darkness. The original 8 had been joined by 4 more, word spreading despite Ethan's preference for privacy. Among the new faces was Angela Reeves, Ms. Reeves' daughter, a senior who'd already been accepted to MIT, but looked lost in a way that had nothing to do with academics. Ms. Reeves, Ethan acknowledged. Your mother know you're here. She suggested it actually, Angela replied, her voice quiet but steady. Said I needed to learn there was more to life than perfect test scores. And what do you think? I think I'm tired of being afraid of imperfection. Sophie stood slightly behind Ethan, suddenly shy in the presence of the older students, but Jennifer Morrison noticed her immediately. Hey, you're Sophie, right? You're in my brother's math class. Sophie nodded and Jennifer smiled warmly. Come on, you can work with me. We're all beginners here. Watching his daughter be absorbed into the group, treated as an equal rather than a child, Ethan felt a shift in his chest. This was what he'd been protecting her from: community connection, the risk of loss. But maybe protection could become its own prison. Today, he announced, we run. A collective groan rose from the group. Not for speed, not for competition, he continued, for meditation. Running teaches you to work through discomfort, to find rhythm in struggle, to keep going when everything in you wants to stop. 3 miles together. Nobody finishes until everybody finishes. 3 miles, Jimmy protested weakly. I can't even run one. Then we'll walk when you need to walk, Marcus said, surprising everyone. Like Mr. Cole said, we all finish together. They set off in the pre-dawn darkness, a raggedy line of teenagers and one 9-year-old, their footsteps echoing off the empty streets around the school. Ethan ran at the back, watching, evaluating, noting who helped whom without being asked. Derek naturally fell into pace with his sister. The Sato twins flanked Jimmy when he struggled. Angela helped Sophie when her shorter legs couldn't match the group's stride. Rebecca, despite her own labored breathing, offered encouragement to everyone who faltered. By the second mile, they'd found their rhythm, not fast, not pretty, but steady. By the third mile, they were moving as a unit, calling out encouragement, adjusting pace automatically to keep everyone together. When they finally returned to the school, sweaty and exhausted but triumphant, Ethan saw something in their faces that hadn't been there before unity. How do you feel? He asked. Like death, Derek panted. Like accomplishment, his sister corrected. Both. Sophie chimed in, her face red but beaming. Both is good. Both is honest, Ethan agreed. Life is both. Pain and accomplishment, struggle and triumph. You can't have one without the other. As they stretched on the gymnasium floor, Principal Martinez entered with a man Ethan recognized from school board meetings, Richard Blackwood, local businessman and major donor to school programs. His son had graduated 5 years ago after a troubled high school career marked by multiple suspensions. Mr. Cole, Blackwood said, his expensive suit incongruous in the sweaty gym. I've been hearing remarkable things about your program. It's not a program yet, Ethan replied, continuing his stretches. Just kids choosing to show up early. Well, I'd like to make it official. I'm prepared to fund equipment uniforms, whatever you need. I'll even pay for you to get proper certifications, personal training, youth counseling, whatever the board requires. Ethan stood slowly reading the man's face. There was desperation there hidden behind the businessman's facade. Why? He asked simply. Blackwood glanced at the students, then back to Ethan. Because my son needed someone like you 5 years ago, and I was too proud to see it. He's in prison now. 3 years for aggravated assault. Started as anger issues I ignored became violence I couldn't control. The gym fell silent, even the students stopping their conversations to listen. I can't help your son, Ethan said quietly. I know, but you can help them. Blackwood gestured to the students, and maybe that helps balance the scales somehow. I don't want uniforms or equipment. These kids need to learn that strength doesn't come from things. But if you want to help, the school counseling center needs funding. Ms. Chen has a waiting list of students who need mental health support but can't afford it outside school. Blackwood blinked, surprised. That's not what I expected you to ask for. Physical training without mental and emotional support is just creating better fighters, not better people, Ethan explained. These kids need both. I'll talk to the board today, Blackwood promised, then paused. My son, when he gets out, would you consider working with him? Have him find me when he's ready, not when you think he's ready, when he knows he is. After Blackwood left, the students dispersed to prepare for regular classes, but Sophie lingered, helping Ethan put away the stretching mats. That was kind of you, she said, sounding older than her 9 years. About the counseling center. It was practical. I can't fix everybody butterfly. But Ms. Chen and others like her, they have the training I don't. Mom would have liked this, Sophie said suddenly. You helping people. Ethan's hands stilled. Sophie rarely brought up Rachel spontaneously, as if mentioning her might cause more pain. You think so? I know so. She always said you had too much good in you to keep it all locked up, that someday you'd have to let it out or it would eat you alive. When did she say that? When she was sick. When she thought I was asleep. She worried about you, about what would happen after. Sophie trailed off, then continued stronger. She'd be proud of you now. Ethan pulled his daughter close, breathing in the scent of her shampoo, feeling the solid reality of her existence. She'd be proud of you. You're braver than I ever was at your age. I'm brave because you taught me to be, Sophie said into his chest. But maybe you're teaching yourself too. The school day progressed with its new normal students nodding respectfully to Ethan, in the halls teachers seeking his opinion on troubled kids, the constant weight of visibility he was still learning to bear. During lunch, he was surprised to find Agent Sarah Walker waiting in his maintenance room. Agent Walker, he said carefully, closing the door behind him. Just Sarah today, she said. I'm here unofficially, remember? People like you are never really off duty. She smiled slightly. Fair point, but I'm actually here about a personal matter. My nephew Danny. He's a sophomore here. Good kid, but his father, my brother, came back from Syria different. PTSD, drinking, domestic violence. They're divorced now, but Danny's angry lost. And you think I can help? I think you understand in a way I can't. I've been in firefights, sure, but always with backup, always with extraction plans. You've been in the real shit, the kind that changes you at a molecular level. Ethan leaned against his workbench. What does Danny know about me? Nothing specific, just that you're the janitor who's been helping kids before school. He doesn't even know I'm talking to you. Keep it that way. If he shows up, it needs to be his choice. Sarah stood to leave, then turned back. You know we ran deep background on you after that video surfaced, the classified stuff missions that don't officially exist. Ethan's expression didn't change, but his body shifted subtly ready. Relax, Sarah said. I'm not here to out you or recruit you. I just wanted you to know that what you did over there, the people you saved, the threats you eliminated, it mattered. And what you're doing here matters too. Different battlefield, same war.
The war for what? For the next generation to be better than we were. After she left, Ethan found himself staring at the small window in his maintenance room, watching students pass by in groups laughing, fighting, living their complicated teenage lives. Each one carrying invisible wounds, fighting invisible battles. His phone buzzed with a text from Jake Morrison in Dubai. Saw a news article about your school program. Proud of you, brother. When you're ready, there's work here that matters. Clean work. Protective details for schools and orphanages. Think about it. Ethan deleted the message, but the offer lingered in his mind. Clean work. Using his skills to protect rather than eliminate.
But that would mean uprooting Sophie, leaving the stability they'd built. The afternoon brought an unexpected confrontation. Ethan was replacing ceiling tiles in the English wing when he heard raised voices from a nearby classroom. Through the door's window, he saw Mr. Harrison, the vice principal, aggressively berating a student, Danny Walker, if the family resemblance was accurate. "You think you're special because your father was a soldier," Harrison was saying. "That doesn't excuse missed assignments, Mr. Walker." "I didn't say it did," Danny replied, his voice tight with controlled anger. "Then stop acting like the world owes you something because Daddy has problems." The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Danny's fists clenched, his body coiling like a spring. Ethan recognized the signs, a young man about to make a life-altering mistake. He entered without knocking. "Mr. Harrison, you're needed in the main office. Principal Martinez asked for you."
Harrison turned irritated. "I'm in the middle of now," Ethan said, his tone leaving no room for argument. Something in Ethan's expression must have penetrated Harrison's bluster because he left muttering about maintenance staff overstepping boundaries. Danny remained frozen, trembling with suppressed rage. "You want to hit something," Ethan observed. "He doesn't know anything about my father, about what he's been through." "No, he doesn't. Harrison's an ass who thinks proximity to power makes him powerful, but putting him through that window wouldn't change that." Danny laughed bitterly. "Would feel good, though." For about 30 seconds. Then there's assault charges, expulsion, your mom crying, your aunt disappointed. That worth 30 seconds of satisfaction. "You're the janitor who fought those twins." "I defended myself when challenged. Different thing entirely." Danny studied him with eyes that had seen too much for his 15 years.
"My dad used to say violence was sometimes the only answer. Your dad's not wrong. Sometimes it is. But 99% of the time it's not, and wisdom is knowing the difference." "How do you know about my dad?" "I don't, but I know that look in your eyes. Saw it in the mirror for years." Danny was quiet for a moment. "The morning training sessions, are they real or just more bullshit adult supervision?" "Show up tomorrow and find out." 5:30 Souths. 5:40. Bring running shoes. That evening, Ethan found himself in Principal Martinez's office with Sarah Chen, the counselor, and surprisingly, Dr. Hiroshi Sato. "Thank you for coming, Mr. Cole," Martinez began. "We've been discussing your informal program and how to best support it." "I've drafted a proposal," Sarah Chen said, sliding a document across the desk. "Official after-school program 3 days a week with optional morning sessions. You'd be a contracted instructor, not replacing your current position but supplementing it." "The pay is minimal," Martinez added apologetically. "I don't care about the pay," Ethan said, reviewing the document. "But I want autonomy. No curriculum imposed, no mandatory participation, no competitions or exhibitions." "Agreed," Martinez said quickly. "Though the board will want some metrics, some way to measure success." "Success is kids not ending up in jail or dead," Ethan said bluntly. "Success is them learning to control their anger instead of letting it control them. How do you measure that in a spreadsheet?" "Attendance records, academic improvement, disciplinary incidents," Dr. Sato suggested. "I've been researching similar programs. The quantifiable benefits usually show within 3 months. And I'd like to volunteer," he continued. "Professional psychological support for participants who need it. Pro bono." Ethan looked at him suspiciously. "Why? Because my sons have changed more in 3 days with you than in 17 years with me. Because I spent so much time teaching them to win that I forgot to teach them to be human. You're doing what I should have done." "We all do what we can with what we know at the time," Ethan said. "Your sons are good kids. They just needed different lessons." "Which you're providing," Martinez interjected.
Mr. Cole, the board meets Thursday. I need you to present the program to them. Nothing fancy, just explain what you're doing and why. I don't do presentations. Then just talk. Tell them what you told Mr. Blackwood this morning. Several board members were very impressed with your request for counseling funds instead of equipment. Ethan stood to leave. Fine, but I'm not wearing a suit. Wouldn't dream of asking. Martinez smiled. Walking back to his maintenance room, Ethan found Sophie waiting with her homework spread across his workbench. Mrs. Chen had to go to a doctor's appointment, she explained. Said I could wait here. How was school? He asked, settling beside her. Good. Weird, but good. Everyone keeps asking me about you about the training. Maya wants to join, but she's scared. Of what? Of not being good enough. She's not athletic like the others. Neither is Jimmy or Rebecca. That's not what this is about. Sophie looked up from her math worksheet. Dad, what is it about really? Ethan considered his answer carefully. It's about learning that strength isn't about being the toughest or the fastest. It's about showing up when showing up is hard. It's about helping others when you can barely help yourself. It's about choosing to build instead of break. Is that what the Marines taught you? No. The Marines taught me to fight. Your mother taught me why fighting isn't always the answer. This program, these kids, it's me trying to pass on both lessons. Sophie returned to her homework, but Ethan caught her small smile. They worked in comfortable silence, father and daughter. Until Sophie asked, "Can Mom see us?" What we're doing now. It was an old question, one she'd asked repeatedly in the months after Rachel's death, but she hadn't asked in over a year. I don't know, Butterfly. I hope so. I think she can, and I think she's happy. We're helping people like she always did. Rachel had been a pediatric nurse spending her days caring for sick children coming home exhausted but fulfilled. Even during her own illness, she'd worried more about her young patients than herself. We're trying, Ethan said softly. That's all anyone can do, right? Try. Yes, sweetheart, that's all anyone can do. The Thursday board meeting arrived gray and rainy, matching Ethan's mood. He stood outside the district office watching parents and administrators file in, wondering how he'd ended up here. 3 weeks ago, he'd been invisible. Now he was about to present to people who controlled the school's budget and policies. Mr. Cole? He turned to find Rebecca Hayes with her mother, a thin woman with suspicious eyes and defensive posture. Mrs. Hayes, Ethan acknowledged. Mr. Cole, she replied stiffly. Rebecca insists on attending your program. I wanted to meet you first. Understandable. I've heard stories about your past, about violence. Mom, Rebecca protested. It's fine. Ethan told the girl, then addressed her mother. You're right to be cautious. I've been in violent situations. I've done things in service to my country that I'll carry forever. But that's exactly why I can teach these kids alternatives to violence. Or you could be teaching them to be more effective at it. I could, Ethan agreed, surprising her. But I'm not. Ask your daughter what we did this morning. We painted the handicapped parking spaces, Rebecca said quickly. Mr. Cole said service to those who need help is the highest form of strength. Mrs. Hayes studied Ethan's face. Rebecca's afraid of everything. Always has been. You think you can change that? No, but I can teach her that courage isn't the absence of fear, it's action despite fear. I still don't trust you. Good. You shouldn't trust anyone with your child until they've earned it. Come watch a session. See for yourself. Mrs. Hayes nodded slowly, then led Rebecca into the building. The girl looked back, mouthing, "Thank you," before disappearing inside. The meeting room was packed. Board members, parents, teachers, and surprisingly several students, including his morning group. Sophie sat with Mrs. Chen in the front row, beaming with pride. Principal Martinez introduced him simply. Mr. Cole has been working with students before and after school teaching what he calls life skills. He's here to formalize the program. Ethan stood feeling the weight of expectations. He'd briefed presidents and generals, but somehow facing these parents felt more daunting. I'm not a teacher, he began. I'm not a counselor or coach. I'm a janitor who knows what it's like to be angry, lost, and looking for purpose. 3 weeks ago, I was challenged to a fight by 2 students who thought strength meant domination. Instead of fighting, I showed them that real strength is restraint. He looked at the Sato twins, who nodded encouragingly. Since then, students have been showing up asking to learn. Not martial arts, though there's some of that. They want to learn how to control their anger, how to channel their fear, how to be better than their worst impulses. What qualifies you to teach this? A board member asked. 8 years in the Marines, including combat deployments. More importantly, 3 years raising my daughter alone after losing my wife. The first taught me to fight. The second taught me when not to. Are you teaching them violence? Mrs. Hayes asked from the audience. I'm teaching them that violence is the last resort of the incompetent. That true strength is building up, not tearing down. This morning, 12 students ran 3 miles together, painted parking spaces, and talked about how to handle bullying without throwing punches. What about liability? Another board member asked. Richard Blackwood stood. I'll personally insure the program. Full coverage, no cost to the district. Murmurs rippled through the room. Mr. Cole, the board president said, what do you need from us? Permission to use school facilities, background checks for any adult volunteers, and trust that I'm not trying to create fighters, I'm trying to create citizens. I'd like to speak. Everyone turned to see Derek Morrison standing his sister trying to pull him back down. I'm Derek Morrison. 2 weeks ago, I was the school bully. I pushed kids around because I was angry about my dad leaving. Mr. Cole could have humiliated me when I tried to start a fight. Instead, he talked to me. He showed me that anger doesn't have to be destructive. He paused, gathering courage. This morning, I helped a freshman with his locker combination instead of shoving him into it. That's what Mr. Cole teaches. Not how to fight, but how not to. One by one, other students stood sharing their experiences. Marcus talked about learning to protect without violence. Jennifer discussed finding purpose through service. Jimmy, voice shaking, explained how the morning runs helped with his anxiety. Finally, Sophie stood, all 4'0" of her. My dad is the strongest person I know, she said clearly, not because he can fight, but because he chooses not to. He teaches that to everyone who's willing to learn. Isn't that what school is supposed to be about? The room was silent for a moment, then Blackwood started clapping. Others joined, and soon the room filled with applause. The board president called for a vote. It was unanimous. Afterward, as people filed out, Ethan found himself surrounded by parents with questions, students with gratitude, and teachers with referrals. Through the crowd, he saw Sarah Walker slip out, giving him a subtle nod of approval. Mr. Cole, Dr. Sato approached with his sons. My boys have something to say. Riku stepped forward. We were wrong about everything. Strength, respect, what it means to be warriors. You've shown us a better way. We'd like to be official assistants in your program, Taro added. Help teach the younger kids what you've taught us. You've been helping since day one, Ethan replied. Official or not doesn't change that. As the crowd finally dispersed, Ethan found himself alone with Sophie and Mrs. Chen. Very proud, Mrs. Chen said, patting his arm. Rachel would be very proud. Sophie took his hand. Home. One more stop, Ethan said. They drove to the cemetery as the rain stopped, leaving the world clean and fresh. Rachel's headstone was simple, beloved wife and mother, her light lives on. Ethan and Sophie stood quietly, each lost in their own thoughts. I told her about the program, Sophie finally said. I think she heard me. What did you tell her? That you're teaching people what she taught you, that love is stronger than hate, that building is better than breaking, that everyone deserves a chance to be better. Ethan knelt beside his daughter. You know what I think she did hear you, and I think she'd say we're doing exactly what we're supposed to be doing. Being helpers, being human. They stood there a while longer as the sun broke through the clouds, casting rainbow patterns through the water droplets on the grass. The journey from invisible janitor to visible mentor had been unexpected, unwanted at first, but now felt inevitable. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. Danny Walker would show up angry and suspicious. More students would come, each carrying their own wounds. Parents would question, administrators would interfere, and Ethan would have to balance it all while maintaining his primary job in raising Sophie. But tonight, standing in the cemetery with his daughter's hand in his, Ethan felt something he hadn't experienced since Rachel's death, purpose beyond mere survival. The skills he'd acquired in violence were being transformed into tools for peace,
The strength built in war was being used to wage a different kind of battle, one for the souls of kids who might otherwise be lost. "Dad," Sophie said as they walked back to the truck. "Are you happy?" Ethan considered the question. Happy seemed too simple a word for what he felt. He was useful again, connected to something larger than his own pain. He was teaching lessons that mattered, helping kids who needed it, building something positive from the ashes of his old life. "I'm something better than happy," he told her. "I'm needed." Sophie squeezed his hand. "You were always needed, Dad. Now other people just know it too." As they drove home through the evening light, Ethan's phone buzzed with texts from students asking about tomorrow's session, parents expressing gratitude, and one from Principal Martinez. "Thank you for stepping up. These kids needed exactly what you're offering." But the text that made him smile was from Derek Morrison. "Mr. C, my mom cried tonight. Good tears. Said I seemed like her son again instead of the angry stranger I'd become. Thank you." This was why he'd said yes to the program, why he'd stepped out of the shadows. Not for recognition or redemption, but for the possibility that broken kids could be helped by a broken man who'd learned how to function despite the cracks. The Friday morning after the board meeting dawned crisp and clear, with 22 students waiting in the pre-dawn darkness. Danny Walker stood apart from the group, his body language screaming reluctance and defiance, but he was there. That was what mattered. 22, Ethan said, surveying the group. Too many for one instructor. "We can help," Riku offered immediately, Taro nodding beside him. "As can I," a new voice said from behind them. Everyone turned to see Master Sato in workout clothes rather than his usual gi or business suit. "If you'll have me as a student, not a teacher," Ethan studied the older man, reading sincerity in his posture. "Get in line then. We run first." The run that morning was different. With more bodies, the group naturally split into smaller clusters based on ability. The Sato twins ran with the newer students, pacing them, offering encouragement. Marcus helped Jimmy when he stumbled. Angela ran beside Sophie, the MIT-bound senior, and the 9-year-old, finding an unexpected rhythm together. Danny Walker ran alone, pushing himself harder than necessary, as if trying to prove something. Ethan fell into pace beside him. "Running from something or toward something?" Ethan asked. "Does it matter?" Danny panted. "Every step we take is a choice, away from or toward, knowing which changes everything." "My dad says running is weakness." "Your dad's wrong. Running is movement. Movement is life. Stagnation is death." They ran in silence for a while before Danny said, "He hit my mom, before the divorce. Hit me too when I tried to stop him. And now you want to hit everyone. Wouldn't you?" "I did. For years. Then I realized I was becoming what I hated." "So what changed?" Ethan thought of Rachel, of Sophie, of the moment he'd held his newborn daughter and promised to be better than his rage. "I found something worth building instead of breaking." When they returned to school, sweating and exhausted, they found Principal Martinez waiting with a woman Ethan didn't recognize, mid-40s professional blazer, sharp eyes that missed nothing. "Mr. Cole, this is Dr. Amanda Richards from the State Education Department. She's here about your program." Ethan's jaw tightened. "Already, it was just approved yesterday." "Relax," Dr. Richards said, extending her hand. "I'm here to help. Your program has attracted attention at the state level. We want to potentially replicate it in other districts. It's been less than a month, but the results are already showing. Derek Morrison hasn't had a disciplinary incident in 2 weeks. That's a record. The Sato twins are volunteering 20 hours a week. Marcus Williams' grades have improved across the board." She pulled out a tablet, scrolling through data. "Whatever you're doing, it's working. What I'm doing is specific to these kids this place. You can't replicate relationship. No, but we can replicate structure. Morning physical activity, afternoon service work, peer mentorship, adult guidance, without judgment. These are transferable concepts." Master Sato stepped forward, still breathing hard from the run. "Dr. Richards, with respect, you're missing the point. Mr. Cole isn't successful because of his structure. He's successful because he's authentic. These kids respond to him because he's been where they are." And we can find other veterans, other people with similar backgrounds. It's not about background, Sophie interrupted, surprising everyone with her boldness. It's about seeing us, really seeing us, not as problems to fix or statistics to improve, but as people. Dr. Richards looked at the 9-year-old with surprise. And you are Sophie Cole, his daughter and his best student. Sophie, Ethan warned gently. What? It's true. You see everyone, Dad. That's why they come. That's why they stay. Dr. Richards made notes on her tablet. I'd like to observe your afternoon session, Mr. Cole. With your permission, of course. It's not my permission you need, Ethan said, gesturing to the students. It's theirs. This is their space, their time. The students exchanged glances, then Marcus spoke for the group. You can observe, but you participate. No standing on the sidelines taking notes. You want to understand what we do. You do it with us. Dr. Richards blinked clearly, not expecting to be challenged by teenagers. I didn't bring workout clothes. We have extras, Jennifer offered. Mrs. Chen keeps a donation box for students who need them. And so 4 hours later, Dr. Amanda Richards, Ph.D. in Education Administration, found herself painting fence posts behind the school, sweating through borrowed sweatpants, listening to troubled teenagers discuss their feelings while performing manual labor. This is therapy, she said to Ethan during a water break. You're running group therapy disguised as work detail. I'm running nothing, Ethan corrected. They're choosing to be here, choosing to work, choosing to talk. I just provide the space. And the example swaps Dr. Hiroshi Sato added, having arrived to volunteer as promised. You show them that trauma doesn't have to define them, that they can build something meaningful despite their pain. Rebecca Hayes was struggling with a particularly stubborn fence post, her frustration mounting visibly. Before Ethan could intervene, Danny Walker moved to help her, showing her how to use leverage rather than force. Where'd you learn that? Rebecca asked. My dad before, Danny trailed off. He was a good teacher before the war broke him. Maybe he's not broken, Rebecca suggested carefully. Maybe he's just stuck, like this post was. Danny considered this, then smiled slightly, the first smile Ethan had seen from him. Maybe, Dr. Richards observed it all, occasionally helping, mostly listening. When the session ended, she was dirt-covered and exhausted, but somehow energized. I've been in education for 20 years, she told Ethan privately. I've never seen anything quite like this. You're not teaching them to be students. You're teaching them to be people. Same thing, isn't it? It should be, but somewhere along the way we forgot that. She paused. I'm going to recommend state funding for your program, significant funding, but I need you to document what you do, create some kind of curriculum that others can follow. I don't do paperwork. Then delegate. The Sato twins seem capable, or that MIT-bound girl Angela. The point is, Mr. Cole, you've stumbled onto something special here. Don't let it die in one small Connecticut town. After she left, Ethan found himself surrounded by his students, all talking at once about the afternoon's work. Through the chatter, he heard his phone ring an unknown number with an international prefix. He stepped away to answer. Cole. Ethan, it's Jake Morrison. I know you've been ignoring my messages, but I need you to listen. I've got a situation here. I'm not available for situations anymore, Jake. It's not that kind of situation. There's an Afghan family here, refugees. The father was one of our interpreters. Remember Kareem saved Thompson's life that time outside Kandahar? Ethan's grip on the phone tightened. He remembered Kareem, brave, loyal, left behind when the U.S. withdrew. What about him? He's here with his family, but his oldest son, Nasir, he's 17 and angry, getting pulled into the wrong crowd. The kid needs someone who understands, someone who can reach him. Jake, I'm not asking you to come here. I'm asking if he can come there, just for a few months. The family has distant relatives in Hartford, 40 minutes from you. The kid could attend your school, join your program. Ethan looked at his students still cleaning up from the day's work. Adding a traumatized Afghan refugee to the mix seemed like asking for trouble. Send me his file, he heard himself say. I'll think about it. Already sent. And Ethan, you're doing good work there. The Brotherhood is proud.
After Jake hung up, Ethan stood holding his phone, feeling the weight of another responsibility settling on his shoulders. Sophie appeared at his elbow, having somehow sensed his distress. "Everything okay, Dad?" "Just more complications, Butterfly." "Good complications or bad complications?" "I don't know yet." That evening, while Sophie did homework at the kitchen table, Ethan reviewed Nasir's file. The boy had witnessed his uncle's execution by the Taliban, had hidden for 3 days in a drainage pipe while fighters searched for his family, had made the dangerous journey to Pakistan and eventually to Dubai. His English was good, Kareem had made sure of that, but his psychological evaluation showed clear PTSD survivors' guilt and displacement. Anger. Sophie looked up from her math. "What are you reading?" "Information about a boy who might join our program." "Is he in trouble?" "He's lost." "Then he should come. That's what the program is for, right? Lost kids finding their way." "It's more complicated than that." Sophie closed her workbook and came to look at the file over his shoulder. She couldn't read most of it, but she saw the photo a serious-faced teenager with dark eyes that had seen too much. "He looks sad," she observed. "He has reasons to be." "So did Derek, so did Danny, so do you." She hugged him from behind her small arms, barely reaching around his shoulders. But sad doesn't have to be forever. That night, Ethan called Jake back. "Send him. But he stays with his relatives, and he follows the same rules as everyone else." "Understood. Ethan, this means a lot." "We'll see. Kid might hate it here. Or he might find exactly what he needs." Monday morning brought unexpected challenges. Ethan arrived to find graffiti spray-painted across the gym wall, "Terrorist Lover," in red letters 3 feet high. Tom Bradley was already there, fury radiating from his normally calm demeanor. Surveillance cameras were mysteriously offline last night. "It's fine, Tom." "It's not fine. This is hate speech." "It's fear," Ethan corrected. "Someone's afraid of what we're building here." The morning students arrived to see the graffiti, their reactions ranging from anger to dismay. Derek immediately grabbed cleaning supplies, but Ethan stopped him. "Leave it for now." "But Mr. Cole," "Let everyone see it. Let them see what fear looks like when it's painted on a wall. Then we'll clean it together publicly during lunch when everyone can watch." Principal Martinez arrived, followed quickly by several board members and concerned parents. The graffiti had already been photographed and shared on social media. "We need to address this immediately," Martinez said. "We will, but not in hiding, not in shame." Ethan gathered his students. "This is meant to divide us, to make us afraid. Instead, we're going to show them what unity looks like." At lunch, when the cafeteria was fullest, Ethan led his entire group outside with cleaning supplies. But instead of just cleaning, they turned it into an event. Someone started playing music from a portable speaker. Students who weren't part of the program joined in. Teachers abandoned their lunch breaks to help. Within an hour, the wall was clean, but more importantly, a crowd of over 200 students and staff had participated. What started as an act of hate became a demonstration of community. "Mr. Cole," a voice called out. He turned to find a young man in Army fatigues, Private First Class Tyler Williams, Marcus's older brother, home on emergency leave. "PFC Williams," Ethan said automatically, straightening slightly. Tyler saluted, which Ethan returned reflexively. "Master Sergeant, I had to come thank you personally for what you're doing for Marcus." "I'm not a Master Sergeant anymore, just a janitor." "With respect, sir, once a Marine, always a Marine." Tyler glanced at his brother, who was helping younger students with the cleaning. "He's different. Better. Mom says it's because of you." "It's because of him." "I just gave him space to figure things out." Tyler nodded, then lowered his voice. "I've got orders for Syria next month. Knowing someone like you is looking out for Marcus. It helps. He's looking out for himself and others now. That's the point." As the crowd dispersed, returning to classes, Danny Walker approached with unexpected news. "My dad wants to meet you." Ethan's expression remained neutral. "Why?" "My aunt, Agent Walker. She told him about the program. He's trying to get better. VA therapy and stuff. He said maybe talking to another vet would help." "What do you think?" Danny shrugged, but there was hope in his eyes. "Can't hurt, right?" "He's already at rock bottom."
Have him come to tomorrow's afternoon session. He can observe. He wants to participate. Then he follows the same rules as everyone else. No special treatment, no war stories, no comparing scars. He works, he listens, he learns. That afternoon, Nasir arrived with his father Kareem, both looking overwhelmed by the American high school environment. Kareem had aged significantly since Ethan last saw him, stress etching deep lines into his face. "Ethan, my friend," Kareem said, gripping Ethan's hand with both of his. "You saved us again." "Jake saved you. I'm just providing an opportunity." Kareem turned to his son, speaking rapidly in Dari. Nasir responded sharply, clearly unhappy about the situation. "He doesn't want charity," and Kareem translated apologetically. Ethan addressed Nasir directly. "Good. I don't give charity. I give chances. You earn everything else." Nasir's English, when he finally spoke, was accented but clear. "They say you killed Taliban. Many Taliban. I killed enemies who threatened innocent people. Some were Taliban, some were others. My uncle, they killed him because he helped Americans, because he believed in something better." "And what do you believe in?" Nasir was quiet for a long moment. "Nothing anymore." "Then you'll fit right in. Half these kids believed in nothing when they started. Now they believe in each other." Sophie, who had been quietly observing, stepped forward. "I'm Sophie. You can sit with me at lunch if you want. I know what it's like to be new and scared." Nasir looked at the small girl with surprise. "I am not scared." "Everyone's scared," Sophie said matter-of-factly. "The brave ones just don't let it stop them." Tuesday's afternoon session was unusually tense. Staff Sergeant Robert Walker, retired, stood at the edge of the group, his body rigid with military bearing despite his obvious discomfort. His son Danny stayed as far from him as possible while remaining in the same area. "Mr. Walker," Ethan said by way of greeting. "Staff Sergeant Walker." The man corrected, then caught himself. "Sorry. Old habits. Just Walker here, or Robert if you prefer. Military ranks don't matter in this space." Walker nodded, his jaw working as he processed this. He was clearly a man used to hierarchy, to structure, to clear chains of command. "Today we're clearing the old garden behind the cafeteria," Ethan announced to the group. "It's been abandoned for years, but we're going to restore it. Make something grow where nothing has grown for a long time." The metaphor wasn't lost on anyone, especially not on Robert Walker, whose hands trembled slightly as he accepted work gloves from his son. For the first hour, father and son worked on opposite ends of the garden. But gradually the rhythm of shared labor began to break down barriers. When Robert struggled with a particularly deep-rooted weed, Danny silently appeared with a shovel. When Danny cut his hand on a hidden piece of glass, Robert wordlessly handed him his own bandana to wrap it. "This is what you do," Robert asked Ethan during a water break. "Manual labor and life lessons. This is how we start. Can't build anything on unstable ground." I tried to teach Danny discipline, structure, the same way the Army taught me. "And how did the Army teach you to deal with watching your friends die, with the guilt of surviving when better men didn't?" Robert's face went pale. "They didn't." "Exactly. So you came home with all that poison inside and nowhere to put it except into the people you loved most." "I never meant—" "None of us mean to, but impact matters more than intention." Ethan watched Danny helping Nasir understand instructions about fertilizer. "Your son is a good kid despite everything. That's on his mother and on him, not on you. But what happens next, that could be on you. I don't know how to fix what I broke. Start by not trying to fix it. Just be present. Do the work. Let him see you trying." By the session's end, Robert and Danny were working side by side, still not talking much, but occupying the same space without hostility. It was a start. Wednesday brought media attention. A local news crew arrived wanting to do a feature on the janitor who transforms troubled teens. Ethan refused to participate, but Principal Martinez convinced him to let them film the students with parental permission. "This could help other schools," she argued. "Other kids who need what you're offering." So Ethan watched from the shadows as his students were interviewed, each telling their story with surprising eloquence. Derek spoke about anger and learning to channel it. Jennifer discussed finding strength in service. Marcus talked about brotherhood and protecting others. Even Nasir, in hesitant English, shared his hope that America could be the fresh start his father promised. But it was Sophie who stole the show. "My dad thinks he's teaching them to be strong," she said to the camera. "But really, he's teaching them they already are strong. They just forgot, like he forgot until they reminded him." "What do you mean?" the reporter asked. "My dad came here to hide after my mom died. He thought being invisible would keep us safe. But these kids saw him, really saw him, and made him remember that hiding isn't living. So while he's saving them, they're saving him too. That's how it works. We save each other." Ethan had to step outside after hearing that, his chest tight with emotion. His 9-year-old daughter understood something it had taken him months to grasp. Tom Bradley found him sitting on the loading dock staring at nothing. "Kids," Tom said, settling beside him with a grunt. "They see everything, don't they? Too much sometimes. My grandson Jimmy, he's different since joining your program. Smiles more, has hope again. After his dad, I didn't think I'd see that again. He's doing the work himself. With your guidance. Ethan, what you've built here, I didn't build anything. It built itself. I just didn't get in the way." Tom chuckled. "Humility's good, but false humility is just another form of pride." Before Ethan could respond, his phone rang. Sarah Walker, the FBI agent. "Mr. Cole, we have a situation. There's been a credible threat made against the school, specifically mentioning your program and the Afghan student." Ethan's blood went cold. "How credible?" "Credible enough that we're taking it seriously. We'll have agents on site tomorrow, but I wanted you aware. Should we cancel the program?" "That's your call, but Mr. Cole giving in to fear lets them win." After she hung up, Ethan stood staring at the school building, weighing risks and responsibilities. Tom noticed his tension. "What's wrong?" "Trouble coming, maybe." "Need help?" "Maybe." Tom stood with difficulty, his bad knee protesting. "Whatever you need, you got it. These kids, this program, it's worth protecting." That evening, Ethan called a meeting with the core group, the original students who'd been there from the beginning. They gathered in his apartment, Sophie making everyone hot chocolate, while Ethan explained the situation. "So there might be danger?" Marcus asked. "There might be. Because of Nasir. Because of fear and hatred. Nasir's just an excuse." "Then we stand together," Derek said firmly. "All of us." "It's not that simple." "Yes, it is," Jennifer interrupted. "Mr. Cole, you taught us that standing up for what's right isn't about it being safe or easy. It's about it being right." "This is different. This could be actually dangerous." "So was my dad when he was drunk?" Danny said quietly. "So was Derek when he was angry. So were the Sato twins when they were arrogant. Danger doesn't go away by hiding from it." Ethan looked at Sophie, curled in the corner chair, listening intently. "What do you think, Butterfly?" "I think Mom would say that fear is just love pointed in the wrong direction. These people who made threats, they love something, and they're afraid of losing it. Maybe if they see what we really do, they'll be less afraid." "Or maybe they'll do something stupid and dangerous," Ethan countered. "Maybe." Sophie agreed. "But isn't that always true? Every day could be dangerous. We still get up. We still try." Thursday morning arrived gray and tense. FBI agents in subtle positions around the school, local police more visible than usual. But at 5:40 a.m., 35 students showed up for morning training, the largest group yet. "You all know about the threat?" Ethan asked. They nodded. "And you came anyway?" "Together," Riku said, and the others echoed together. They ran that morning as one unit, no one racing ahead, no one falling behind. Nasir ran in the center, protected without being obviously protected. Robert Walker ran beside his son, their strides slowly synchronizing. As they returned to school, they found a crowd waiting. Parents, teachers, community members all standing in silent support. Someone started clapping, and soon applause filled the morning air. "What is this?" Ethan asked Principal Martinez. "This is what happens when a community decides fear won't win," she replied. The day progressed without incident, but the tension remained palpable. During the afternoon session, they worked on the garden now, showing the first signs of new growth. The metaphor felt heavier now, more important. "Mr. Cole," Nasir said, working beside him, "if something happens because of me, Nothing happens because of you. Things happen because of hatred and ignorance. You're just trying to live your life and heal from trauma. That's not a crime or a provocation. In my country, just existing was sometimes enough to get killed. This isn't Afghanistan, and even if danger comes, you don't face it alone. Look around. Nasir had seen dozens of students working together, laughing together, protecting each other just by being present. This is America, he asked. This is what America can be, Ethan corrected, when we remember what we're supposed to be about. As the session ended without incident, the FBI agents began to withdraw. The threat, it seemed, had been just that, a threat meant to inspire fear rather than action. Cowards, Derek spat, making threats they won't follow through on. Be grateful they're cowards, Ethan told him. Real violence is nothing to wish for. That evening, as Ethan and Sophie prepared dinner in their small apartment, she asked, "Were you scared today?" "Terrified," he admitted, "but you didn't show it. Part of being a leader is carrying fear so others don't have to." "That sounds lonely." "It can be." Sophie hugged him tightly. "Good thing you're not alone then." Friday's morning session felt like a celebration. The threat had passed, the community had stood together, and something fundamental had shifted. The program wasn't just about individual healing anymore, it was about collective strength. Dr. Richards returned this time with a camera crew and several state officials. "Mr. Cole, the governor, wants to fund programs like yours in every district. We need you to help train facilitators." "I told you this isn't reproducible. The specifics aren't," she agreed. "But the principles are. Physical activity, meaningful work, peer support, adult mentorship without judgment. These concepts can be adapted. And what about when those programs face threats? When communities push back against helping troubled kids or refugees? Then they'll need leaders with courage. Like you." Ethan looked at his students, all listening to the conversation. "I'm not the leader here. They are. Each other's leaders, their own leaders. I just gave them space to discover that." "Then help us give other kids that same space." Before Ethan could respond, Master Sato stepped forward. "I'll help. My dojo has locations statewide. We can provide facilities trainers who understand Mr. Cole's methods." "As will I," Dr. Hiroshi Sato added, "psychological support for programs statewide." One by one, others offered resources. Robert Walker talked about connecting with veteran networks. Parents offered professional skills. Teachers volunteered time. "You see," Dr. Richards said to Ethan, "you started something that's become bigger than you. That's what real change looks like." As the morning session ended and students dispersed to regular classes, Ethan found himself standing with Sophie in the garden they'd restored. Green shoots pushed through dark soil, reaching toward sunlight. "Mom would be so proud," Sophie said softly. "Of you or the program?" "Both, but mostly of you, Dad. You stopped hiding. I hid to protect you. I know, but I don't need protection from life, Dad. I need to learn how to live it, and you're teaching me that. You're teaching all of us that."